Burlington Conservation Commission. The first order of business is to do the roll call. We have some people that are online and some people that are here. The notice that I'll read is that this meeting of the Town of Burlington Conservation Commission is being conducted through hybrid participation as well as in-person attendance. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to or view this meeting while in progress may do so into the BCAT Government Cable Access Channel, the BCAT Government Meetings Facebook Live feed, or you can join the meeting over the phone at 408-418-9388, and the meeting number that's shown on the screen is 179-747-7321. To join the WebEx live video conference, click on the link in the Conservation Commission's meeting page or on the Town of Burlington's town calendar, which will call up the agenda. Or you can go to webex.com and put in the meeting number and a password if you need it. It's on the screen and on the agenda. New public hearings open tonight will not be closed so as to allow comments from those who are unable to access or uncomfortable with the technology. Comments and concerns regarding public hearings should be emailed to conservation@burlington.org before the next meeting, which is March 24th, 2022. Okay, now for the roll call. I'll call your name, please. If you're online, unmute yourself and say either present or here. Don Bernstein.
He was going to be 5 or 10 minutes late.
Okay, let me know when he shows up and I'll announce it for the record. Commissioner Gail Lima.
I don't think they can hear us.
Oh,
Gail, can you hear
he
us?
said yes, but I can't hear. Oh, no.
Can anybody else hear?
Ed, can you hear us?
Their stone faces tell me that they can't
Can
hear
you
us.
turn on your audio and will that be sufficient? Probably not for everybody.
Did I mute the whole meeting? So I'm the host, but my computer's back in my office.
But
'cause
they
I
can
couldn't
unmute
connect.
themselves.
Yeah, but I might have every,
Yeah, but we can unmute ourselves, right?
I think I'm in there.
Oh, wait.
Here we go.
Oh,
All right, let's do this over.
start again.
scary.
Don
So there is a
Bernstein is
problem
not
with the
here
sound,
yet.
right?
Is he?
I'm glad to hear that, because I was wondering if it was me.
Yes, I can't hear anything either except for the 3 people that are remote.
Yeah, exactly.
You hear us?
Gail, can you hear us?
Oh,
I can hear John and Eileen, but I heard nothing Larry said.
Oh, I'm
Same.
sorry. I had muted this.
Our computer?
Yes.
Same was true for Indra and Ed. We couldn't hear at home.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
you're now hearing it through my computer, and that's not right. We can't have that. No, we've got to do something on the one over there.
I'll go. Go check.
Our first meeting in 2 years in person.
oh, why not?
I'm gonna mute this because it's horrible in this end, okay?
Can't hear you, Eileen.
Me neither.
Well,
So
John's
the
gonna
microphone
see if it
working
was
is
something.
her computer.
John went over to see if it was something he did at his end, 'cause he has the meeting running over there from his computer too. I suspect it's us over here. Does
Gail,
anybody else know more than me about this
Can
kind
you
of
hear me,
stuff?
Gail?
In here?
No, there's no microphones on right now, Lenny.
Okay.
Oh, we just turned the microphones. No, the microphones are on. They're red, right? Microphones are on.
All right, okay.
Red is on.
Let's see.
Does that help? Can anybody hear me? That's it. Just turn the microphones on.
That's good.
I can't, they can hear me. Right? Can you hear us now?
I'm.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, I just turned this microphone on.
Oh, yep.
Red
that
is-
works.
Houston, we have sound.
They were red, so now I just pushed it and they all turned white and we're on. All right. They're rolling.
Gail, can you hear me?
Welcome back.
All good.
Okay, you're here, clearly.
Yeah, I'm here. Yep.
All right, sorry for this interruption, folks.
Be edited out.
Sorry.
All right, Commissioner Indra Deb,
Here,
Commissioner Bill Boyven,
I'm here.
Commissioner Jennifer O'Riordan
Not tonight.
tonight, Commissioner Ed Loturco,
Here.
Associate Commissioner Kent Moffett.
Here.
Okay.
He's
Administrator John Keely
here.
and Assistant Administrator Eileen Coleman.
Here.
All right. Okay, next item on the agenda is to say that we have at least one item I'm aware of. Item number 6 is the continued public hearing for 102R Wind Street. And it is to replace a culvert and restore wetlands and stream bank. It's DEP file number 122-666. It will be continued until the March 24th meeting. Could I have a motion to continue that public hearing, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second, Gail.
Okay, Gail, how do you vote?
Yes.
Indra?
yes,
Bill?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So by a vote of 5-0, the meeting for the hearing for 102R Wind Street is continued
All right,
to the
go ahead.
March 24th meeting.
So I see the applicant is here. We got the request from your engineer. Did he leave? Oh, no, he's still here. So we had a request to continue, Mr. Lee. I don't know, Steve Drutson must not have told you.
Okay, all right, we will follow up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, Don's here.
Okay, Don Bernstein is here for the record. Welcome, Don. All right. Kent?
just one thing I
Yeah.
see on my screen, it says select board meeting. It doesn't say Concom meeting.
Oh, it's just the select board meeting room. That's
Oh,
the
I see,
the
okay.
machine that's hosting this.
Kent, I'm going to try going in reverse order. I always put you last. So I'm going to try to mix it up a little bit so you're either in the middle or the beginning when we call for comments. Just thought I'd give you a heads up, Kent. Okay, the next item on the agenda is citizens' time. Is there someone here for something not on the agenda that would like a few minutes of our time? Some issue that you'd like to draw our attention to? Okay, the record should show that no one is participating in citizens' time. Item 3 is approval of minutes. Are we in a position to approve February 10th?
Yes.
Could I have a motion? Is there any substantial conversation needed? Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 10th, 2022?
So moved, Gail.
Second?
Second, Ed?
All right. Don, how do you vote?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Indra?
Abstain.
Bill?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
The chair votes yes by a vote of 5-0-1. The minutes for February 10th, 2022 are approved. We have, how about the minutes for February 24th? Position to approve?
Yeah, Bill had just a minor
Minor.
addition. It was nothing
All right.
substantial.
If there's nothing further, motion to approve February 24th minutes, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second, Indra.
Don, how do you vote?
I have to abstain. I wasn't at that meeting.
Gail?
Yes.
Indra?
Yes,
Bill?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, again by a vote of 5-0-1. The minutes of February 24th are approved. Next, we have a continued public hearing. This is for notice of intent for 25 Blanchard Road. You may know it as Mary Cummings Park. The trustees are the applicant, trustees of reservation. They are installing flow devices in a beaver dam. Now, do we have the DEP number for that?
We do not.
Is there someone here for the trustees?
I don't see them.
Okay,
You have at least one neighbor who was just hoping to catch up a little bit on this tonight. So she wanted to be here in person.
Okay, can we, even though we won't convene the hearing, can you give them a rundown, John, on what the status is?
Okay, well, the status is that for a notice of intent, for us to close a hearing on a notice of intent, we have to receive a file number from the Department of Environmental Protection. And there was a mix-up in their filing fee. They sent it to the wrong office, so they didn't get a file number. They did send it about a week ago, but they still haven't received the file number. So the notice of intent is for the installation of what's called a beaver deceiver inside the dam at Mary Cummings Park.
And so the hope is that once this is installed, the water may not disappear, but the water level will recede somewhat. And if that occurs, then there'll be perhaps less threat to the backyards of the various neighborhoods that are abutted. That's the idea behind it. And I can say that the company that's installing it, they monitor it for the first year, and then the trustees are going to monitor it for the years after that. But if it has to be repositioned or lowered a bit, depending on what they see as the results, they can actually adjust it as well. Okay, so that's kind of the status.
Thank you.
Sure, I don't think there's anything more to tell you at this time, but the work can't begin until we can close the hearing, and we can't close the hearing until we have the DEP file number that they signed. Okay,
Understood.
okay, all right.
They weren't going to be able to start, or they didn't plan to start until after the ice was gone and everything in the snow. So I don't think the DEP number delay, if as long as it's not extensive, will.
Yeah.
It should happen.
The expand start.
All right, so,
You have a hand raised, Larry.
what's that?
You have a hand raised there.
Yes,
Hi, I'm Betsy Hughes, town meeting member.
Sure.
7, and I live in Marigold Way. I just want to get a sense from the commission, is this something that you all are inclined to support, this beaver deceiver action for this?
I can put it like this, it is an environmentally acceptable manner of handling this situation. So I can't speak for each individual commissioner, but unless they speak up now, I strongly suspect they're probably going to vote in favor of it.
This is a balance between what would be illegal to completely remove the dam and the beavers and doing nothing. So this is sort of an intermediate where we can temper the level of the backwash from this dam. And hopefully to a point where it's still acceptable to the beavers. If you lower it too much, the beavers will just build a new dam. If you don't lower it enough, you still have flooding. So this is, and the people that are doing it, they're professionals, are doing nothing but this. So, hopefully they're doing it in a manner that is effective and solves the problem and maintains it. It's going to be like a foot or two lower than the current level of the water.
Right.
I think I was just looking to see if there are any objections of this approach in terms of the Conservation Commission. If there were any, it would be good to know what they would be so that we could address those when we have to come back to the next meeting for approval.
Right. We've already had at least one hearing on this, and there were no objections on the part of any commissioners at the time. Okay, so.
This is sort of the state-of-the-art solution.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, all right. Yeah, oh, sure. All right, so should we continue from motion to continue?
Correct.
I guess we need a motion to continue the Mary Cummings Park public hearing by trustees of the reservation to install a flow device in the Beaver Dam to the March 24th meeting of the Burlington Conservation. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved, Don.
Second?
Second, Ed.
All right. Okay, Dawn, how do you vote?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Indra?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes by a vote of 600. The public hearing for Mary Cummings Park is continued to March 24th. All right, so next on the agenda is item number 5. It is a public hearing. Notice is given that the commission will hold a public hearing during which time will take information related to erosion and sedimentation control, otherwise known as a stormwater permit. application. It was filed by Senate Construction Corporation for the construction of a warehouse addition, additional parking, and new stormwater management system. It's all located at 15 Adams Street in Burlington. The application is being heard under Burlington Bylaw, Article 14, Section 6. And the commission will review all information relative to the application and may issue an erosion and sedimentation control permit for proposed activities. The application is available for viewing at the Conservation Office at 25 Center Street, or it may be downloaded at the commission's webpage. Okay, so is there somebody here for that, either online or in person? You're welcome to, I guess you come up to the side table now. So obviously, you state your name and affiliation for each person, so we have it for the record, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so my name's Robert France. I'm with Senate Construction Corp. We're the applicant, design builder for the project. And I have Dan Hazen, who's our civil engineer of record, the HSH Associates. And just to give you a little background, we've applied for a planning board approval permit in September of 2021. They advised us at that time not to submit the sedimentation and control plan until we had cleared the Board of Health. So we did not submit the plan until after we had cleared the Board of Health. We got approval through the Board of Health. Not sure the exact date, but it was approximately 3 weeks ago that they approved us to move forward with the plan. So with all that being said, I know that Eileen had indicated that she wanted a little more information on the phosphorus. We're looking forward to getting our approval, and I'll turn it over to Dan to educate in relationship to the rest of it.
Dan, would you like me to share the grading information then?
Yes, if you could, please, that'd be great.
Can I ask one question while that's coming up? You said you needed to go before the Board of Health. Can you sort of explain for the record why you needed to go before the Board of Health?
Sure. The original site had been contaminated with hazardous materials. It was owned by Electrolux at the time. Our client, Filter Sales and Service, took ownership of the property and has been involved with the cleanup ever since. And I believe about 5 years ago, they had get the hazmat material. Well, first of all, the initial hazmat cleanup occurred back in the late 1900s or 1990s, if you will. And since then, there's been a monitoring program going on. And about 5 years ago, it was deemed that the groundwater contaminants were at a level where they were deemed within environmental standards. So that was primarily the reason for going before the Board of Health. The other reason was approval of the detention basin system and stormwater management system, which we've gotten approval as well. So that was the reason for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so why don't you folks make your introductory presentation on what the project is? And then you might want to comment on what conditions or what changes you had to make as a result of the Board of Health. That might be helpful. Okay?
All right, my name's Dan Hazen. I'm with Howard Stein Hudson Associates, civil engineers. The site, the building was built in 1963. The site is about six and a half acres. The building itself is 40,000 square feet. Currently, there's 62 parking spaces. The site has water and sewer and utilities to it. Overall, there's approximately 75,000 square feet of impervious area in parking on top of the 40,000 square feet. Currently, there's no stormwater controls on the site. There are catch basins and curb cuts to direct the water just off the parking area onto the uplands on the outside of the parking area, but there's no, due to the age of the site, there's no best management practices in place other than the catch basins. There is a wetland that's about 250 feet to the south in that area off the property. It's a wooded wetland. There's not much standing water. I believe you did a site walk out there. It probably is some standing water at this time, just due to spring thaw and frozen conditions. The site is, we're proposing to construct a 12,277 square foot addition in the back, right there. That will be all warehouse. Currently, there are some Connex boxes on the site to store air filters. That is their primary product. They receive filters and then they ship them out from there. So there's not as really any production there. It's more of a distribution situation. Construction will be constructing an additional 1,300 square feet of impervious area. We're here before you tonight because we will be disturbing about 46,000 square feet of area. Of that, 34,500 square feet would be woods, and the other 11,000 square feet would be pavement that we'll be ripping up and then replacing with either building or new pavement. The soils on the site are fairly gravelly soil. It's a Canton fine sandy loam and urban land mix. We did do soil testing out there through the Board of Health. They did witness it. We did not observe any groundwater. And again, it was a fairly gravelly sandy loam. The closest disturbance to any wetland is about 230 feet, and that would be the edge of the basin. Stormwater controls that we're looking to install would be a deep sump hooded catch basins. Two of those, we're also going to be incorporating, there is a catch basin that is just to the west of your cursor right now that is existing, that just discharges overland. And those 3 catch basins will flow to a sediment forebay. And then from there to a infiltration area on the other side of that filter berm. And from there, it would discharge through an outfall control structure for some of the larger storms and flow down to the wetland in the same path that currently the water travels. Through the stormwater treatment train that we're proposing, it'll remove 89% of the total suspended solids using the, we use a software called BMP Accounting developed by Tetra Tech for the EPA. And using that software, proposed to remove 99% of the phosphorus and 100% of the nitrogen from that area. The use of the area, there's not a lot of landscaping in that area, so we're not anticipating much fertilizer treatment for any sort of the landscape. Most of the flow that flows to that parking area that's proposed will be through woods or whatever falls on the pavement itself. We are infiltrating all the roof runoff from the 12,000 square foot addition. Did size the basin to infiltrate the first flush of the rainfall, which would be the first ½ inch of runoff from the site or from the pavement. We use the ½ inch because this is not in a critical area. It's not soils that infiltrate greater than 2.41 inches per hour. It's not a cold water fishery or bathing beach. So As far as erosion control, we are proposing hay bales and silt fence to encompass the entire area to act not only as sediment control, but also as a limit of construction to allow contractors to be able to see the limits of, where they can work up to. Through the Board of Health approval, originally this was designed as a more of a infiltration basin. And the Board of Health does not like to see water standing for any sort of period of time. So what we were able to do was install at the outfall control structure, I believe it's an 8-inch PVC riser pipe with 1-inch holes at 3 different elevations. And we put the first elevation of those holes above the first flush elevation so that the pollutants and contaminants in the phosphorus and nitrogen for 99% of the storms will be infiltrated into the ground. They're, through we have a 2-foot separation to groundwater per stormwater handbook. So we're allowed to, that will allow for filtering before it reaches the groundwater. So the other comments that the Board of Health had was they wanted to see some sort of shrubbery or something to delineate the edge of the parking from the detention basin to prevent people from driving in. And we also had discussions with the Board of Health about construction methods for a vapor barrier underneath the building, the proposed addition. So that was essentially the crux of the Board of Health, was that they wanted the water to drain out faster than originally designed, so that the water wouldn't be standing for as long as it was, but we're still able to hold the water for about 12 hours for treatment for a 2-year storm. The 100-year storm, I believe it's up to about 18 hours, but it's still below what we had originally proposed, which was around, I believe, 36 hours, but it was still under the 72-hour requirement for dewatering of a basin through the stormwater handbook.
Right, and the Board of Health was happy with how many hours for it to retain water?
It was 12 hours. Let me just double check, but
Did they tell you a maximum amount that they were looking for in terms of time?
no, there was no maximum. It was
Do the best you can.
do the best we can, and it was sort of try to balance the the most it'll hold for the longest time is the 6 inches, because when we did design this, we did want to allow for some water to be able to flow out of the basin to the wetland, so that we can kind of keep the wetland hydrated so that it wouldn't dry up by infiltrating everything from that into the ground, and then, not flowing. We wanted to keep it going to the wetland to keep the wetland a wetland.
So before we move on, by way of summary, as a result of the Board of Health, the first flush, the 1/2 inch, is being infiltrated.
Correct.
It's no higher than 8 inches.
6 inches, yes.
6 inches or whatever.
Yep.
Then when you get the higher rated storms, it overflows and will discharge through the second basin and so forth.
Correct.
Okay, just all set. Okay, just want to make sure we understood. All right, so John or Eileen, do you have some comments for us on this one?
I think it's going to be me on this one. So as Dan explained, it's a commercial site. They're proposing a very large addition, and then the addition plus the parking lot work will bring it over the 1 acre threshold that we added last year to our bylaw. So that requires them to reduce phosphorus by 60% and TSS by 90%. So they went through to the Board of Health first, as Dan explained, because there was historic contamination on this site. it's been pretty clean for the last, if I watched the Board of Health meeting, it's been pretty clean for quite a while now. They put a new infiltration well, they put a new monitoring well into the site of the proposed infiltration basin to check that, because the one that was there was no longer functioning, or they couldn't find it or something, and that water was perfectly adequately clean. So as he explained, the Board of Health was then concerned because I think part of the issue was that they didn't have a subcommittee meeting, so they kind of just didn't like Dan's presentation, and they wanted them to reduce the amount of time in which the water stood. So I think what's unfortunate here, but maybe it's not unfortunate, I think we just need some clarification. Now that the water isn't being held for very long in the infiltration basin, can you be confident about the phosphorus reduction and the TSS reduction based on the fact that it's not staying there very long? And is there any way that you could retain the first inch, because that'll guarantee? So can you maybe go through the numbers that you sent us for the BATT?
Oh, for the VATT, yes.
BATT?
That's the BMP accounting.
Something tool.
Yeah, it's the BMP accounting and tracking tool. That was the software that we use. So basically what we do is we take the square footage of impervious area and upland area, and then determining by the use, input that into the software, and then that calculates how much phosphorus and nitrogen reduction we get through that based on the land use, the impervious area, the upland area, or not the pervious area, the impervious area. So it's, as far as, are we confident? Yes, it's.
So does the shorter retention time affect that? Because that's a very, very high number, that phosphorus efficiency, 99.8%, which is fantastic if that's
Right. It's
with the new numbers, with the new hours, I mean.
right. That's the, you know, that first flush when that rain comes, that's where the primarily most of the pollutants come out. And like I said, during most of the storms, you know, to get the 2-year storm we designed for is 3 inches of rain. So that, you know, that's a fairly significant amount of rain. The 100-year storm, I believe, is up to 9 inches now, using the Cornell method with the extreme rainfall from the global warming that we're, and the more intense storms that we're receiving. So yeah, as far as, are we comfortable with those numbers? Yes, it's, you know, it's.
And it's based on the inherent assumption that almost all of the phosphate would be in that first flush, really, is what you're really saying.
Correct, for the majority of the storms. I mean, some of the larger storms, the 100-year storms, you know, they're more intense. You get a lot more rain, a lot faster. But for, like I said, for most of the storms.
Okay, let me ask our staff, Eileen and John, are you comfortable with that as the underlying assumption? That the phosphorus is in that first 3 inches?
Oh, the phosphorus probably is in the first flush. I mean, most of the phosphorus, yes, it's true. This is our first, since we updated the bylaw last year, this is our first very current project.
Okay.
Which, so we have to be pretty comfortable with the numbers too, because we have to be able to justify that to the EPA as well.
Understandable.
So that's just why, if you have the numbers that you inputted into the tool, could you send those to me? So I can just understand the process.
I have a concern on that. I mean, maybe you could help me understand better. The first flush is that first half inch of rain, and that's all being captured in the forebay.
In the forebay, yeah, for the water quality. Well, the water quality volume that we need to make, the water quality volume we need to hold in the forebay through stormwater management is 0.1 inches.
Okay, so then the first half inch ends up through the forebay into the
Correct.
basin itself.
And that was why when we designed the riser pipe, that's why we were able to put the orifices at a certain elevation, so that that first flush it gets through the forebay. That takes out the gross particulate, the larger sand, solids, things that might get through the catch basin. And then the finer particles, the And the dissolved particles, those actually will infiltrate into the ground in that area.
Right.
Due to the, from the soil tests, the soil being as gravelly and permeable as it is in that area.
But here's my concern. First half inch, if you get a half inch of rain, I agree, you're gonna capture all the phosphorus. What if you get an inch an hour for 2 hours? I mean, you get, 2 inches of rain, you've already captured a lot more than the first half inch. It hasn't had a chance to percolate yet, and you're already overflowing downstream.
Right.
Some of that phosphorus, aren't you?
If you look at the way that the storms occur, it's not, they start out gradual, they kind of peak, and then they taper off.
Okay.
So that first flush, that first half inch, has a chance, it's infiltrating into the ground as there's water coming behind it. So those dissolved nutrients, the phosphorus, the nitrogen, those actually will make it into the ground before the bulk of the storm, so to speak, follows behind.
And yet you showed infiltration times that were significantly longer than an hour, for example, right?
Right, we have, that's throughout the course of the storm. We based this on a 24-hour storm. So that basically it's that first flush has time. So it's infiltrating throughout the entire storm. It's not just, it's not, okay, there's this much water here and it just has to go in at a certain amount. It's slowly percolating in as the majority of the storm follows behind.
I just have in my head that somehow it's all mixing, and some of it, before it infiltrates, is actually being mixed with the remainder and going over the overflow. But I'm no expert on this. I'm not a stormwater engineer either, but that's what my intuitive look at it.
All right, let's, are you done with your comments, Eileen?
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So the soils look really good out there, but on 2 of your 3 test pits, you hit refusal at fairly shallow depths. 6 feet, I think, on one of them.
Yes.
72 and 90.
So so what kind of info, how much above the bottom of the basin is that then? Like 5 feet?
The bottom of the basin, we're actually building the berm up so that the bottom of the basin's almost at grade. I believe it might be only a foot or two down off the, I can't. But we're not really excavating into the ground, so there is a good 4 feet of, I believe, material below the bottom of the infiltration basin to the ledge.
Then it'll hit ledge, then do you know where it'll go when it hits the bedrock?
Not knowing where the bedrock is, I mean, we're assuming that it's going to be at the same depth. This area, I believe, was excavated at one point because I don't believe there was a lot of, there wasn't a lot of topsoil.
Didn't they take out all the topsoil because of the contamination? Is that what I heard them saying in the Board of Health?
I believe so.
Of course, without knowing the contours of the bedrock, you can't really say definitively where the water's gonna go if it gets down that far. It's either gonna spread out or it's gonna follow the slope of the bedrock, right?
Correct.
And there's a number of large boulders out there as well, so we're not certain that it's
Right.
ledge, okay? I mean, I don't know if you noticed that when you did your site, but there's a number of large boulders.
It may not be ledge either, is what you're saying.
That's the point I'm making.
There's a massive, just underneath where it says proposed extended detention basin, there's a large pile of boulders in that area. So.
Okay.
And then just one sort of editorial comment. So the original design was a infiltration basin designed to drain within 72 hours, which is much less than the life cycle of any mosquito species that we have here. So.
Well, it was actually going to drain in 28 hours.
Right. So the original design would not have been any sort of public health threat at all with regards to mosquitoes.
Okay.
Just comment.
And can I just make, this is kind of, I guess, an editorial thing too. Just on your nutrient, on the phosphorus removal treatment train, I actually don't think you can count the deep sump catch basins before the infiltration basin, because I think the infiltration, you're only supposed to count one thing. as far as I'm aware,
For
Or-
the,
as like the EPA curves, they're
oh,
all
okay.
based on just the infiltration basin.
Okay.
So you're not supposed to, it's a small amount. but
Yeah, it's the,
the deep sump doesn't count.
yeah, I think the deep sump only gave us about 2%.
Yeah, it gave it, but so rather than being of 98%, it would have been up to 100. It's a small number, but you might want to,
Yeah, we can update that when I send you the actual,
yes, please, the numbers that you put into the bat.
yeah, the backup information.
Okay, anything else, Sean?
Thank you.
All right, so let's, why don't we start with Gail? Gail, you have any comments?
Yeah, I have a few questions from looking over the plan and so forth. I just need to organize myself here. So some of these were answered. So I have a question, and hopefully I have my notes are clear from what I've read. So could you actually maybe it would be easier if you could explain 1S and 2S in terms of so you talked about kind of 1S flows to the wetland, right?
Let me just grab
Discharge?
this report.
What's this from, Gail? And I'll share it.
So hold on. So let me go back to the documents. This was in the description, and it had to do with the catch basins. And I believe they were identified as 1S and 2S.
Those are the subcatchments that the
Okay.
HydroCAD report produces.
Right. Yep. Right. And so you talked about those kind of the 1S went to the wetlands in Adams Street, right? The outflow.
Correct. The
Okay.
1S is basically the drainage area that's to the north and to the west of the site. And 2S is the pavement and the existing building that flows down to Adams Street.
Okay, so 2S goes out to the street?
Correct. We are not,
Okay.
basically, all the construction is gonna occur in 1S.
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
Okay, and so all the, so you're saying all the new construction and all the disturbance, that's all gonna be handled by 1S, that there's not gonna be any that flows towards 2S?
2S is the area, the portion of the site that is not going to be served by construction.
Right, but
Or a very minor amount.
yes, I understand that, but the new construction, none of that's gonna feed towards that direction, is that what you?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
That's kind of why that's where we drew the dividing line, so
Right.
that,
Yep.
you know.
Okay, so there's a whole lot of trees coming out of this site, and that's kind of concerning in just in terms of the impact that has. I don't know if there's, are the only plantings that are proposed here, the arborvitaes around the basin?
I believe so. I don't think there's any additional landscaping that's being proposed. We're really not extending out too far outside of the envelope of the paving and the basin. Tried to keep everything as
Right,
compact as
but there was
possible.
34,000 square feet of woods, is what I heard.
Correct.
That's a lot. So this warehouse, I assume it has a flat roof?
It has a single slope roof directed towards the settling basin or the basin.
So I'm just thinking about the impact of loss of that many trees. Is this going to be like a membrane roof that you're going to have on there?
It's a standing seam metal roof.
Metal, okay.
Yeah.
So the reason why I'm asking is a couple of things. First of all, losing the trees, we're losing a lot in terms of impact related to heat islands, and it would increase the amount of heat in the area, but also the impact related to climate change, that it would be nice to see some kind of benefit here of a construction, either, solar panels or some type of, light colored reflective roof that wouldn't absorb heat. It would be nice to see some accommodations for that many trees that are lost, that would impact the area.
Yeah.
Um,
So the roof is a standing seam galvanized metal roof, so it's highly reflective.
Right, and any plans for like solar panels? I mean, these are great opportunities for new construction of, these type of industrial buildings.
Yeah, I mean, we always, consider it and recommend it to our clients, but it's not always, in their plans. So I'd have to leave that up to our clients to make that determination, but I'm
You might say that the town would benefit from it and they'd be interested in it, maybe entice them a little bit. The other thing that I saw that in the O&M plan, and I heard you discuss that because there's no plantings, there wouldn't be any fertilizer and so forth. So I think you need to edit your O&M plan, because in there it mentioned something about, talked about the mowing of the basin, but it also mentioned things about fertilizing and pest control. So those things should be removed, because obviously, fertilizer is going to add to the nitrogen phosphorus impact. And there's really no reason to be doing that, any of those things in the infiltration basin. All right, well, that's all I have for now. I'll listen to what everybody else has to say and maybe have something else.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to make a comment to the board that, I think this is a great example of why the town really needs to look at a tree conservation bill, and that when you have this kind of loss of trees, that at least, there'd be some kind of way that those trees maybe couldn't be replicated at the site, but trees could be added somewhere else as part of the loss of that impact, so that, the town wouldn't suffer because of that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Gail.
Yep.
All right, Kent, let's go to you second for a change. Do you have any comments at all on this or any questions?
No, I agree with Gail on the tree part. I think that's a good point. I think she covered the vast majority. I was just curious, with the change, how many new parking spots are going to be? Because I think in the erosion sediment control said like there currently is going to be 63 there in the. But is there going to, like, how many more parking spots are going to be?
I believe we're adding 4 spaces overall throughout the entire site. So it's from 62 to 66, I believe, is the final count.
Okay. And then just with the warehouse, it said that it's going to be 12,000 roughly square feet, like, but the 46,000 is going to be disturbed. Is the difference going to be all parking lot, or like what's the difference between what you're disturbing and what the addition?
Well, a portion of that's going to actually be the basin itself, so that there will be disturbance for the parking lot, but there's also, because when we looked at the disturbance number, that we incorporated everything that was disturbed. It was, even though that the berm itself is going to be revegetated for stability and erosion control methods, the area outside of the parking lot that needed to be regraded, that's going to be revegetated. So there is a portion of it that'll be parking. The other portion will be basin and associated landscaping around the parking area.
Yeah, if I might add, if you look at the plan, and you can see, and it's light gray, or it's faded, if you will. The majority of the addition, I'll say, let me take that back. It appears to be about 66%, 67% of the addition is going over an existing parking area. Hence the small difference in number of parking spaces.
Okay. All set, Ken?
That Gail covered most of what I had, but I definitely agree. Gail's points about the tree part, that's a key thing. I think that's a good point.
All right, Dawn.
Hi, I just emailed John and Eileen a photo. I don't know if you got it or you're able to put it up. Is that possible?
Yep, I'll do it now.
Thank you.
Share.
That's it. Okay, so the question I have is, can you point out on this image where all this is occurring, the construction and everything?
It will be to the top of your screen.
Okay,
Correct. Right in that area will be the addition, and then the basin will be in that area. Yes, correct.
okay. That's all I've got for right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Indra?
Yeah, is that, did I hear that you are adding only 1,300 square feet impervious area? Is that,
Sorry, I didn't understand.
I'm sorry.
I said that impervious area, how much you are adding? Is that 1,300 square feet only?
13,000.
Or 13,000?
Well, it's slightly less than 13,000.
Yeah, it's, well, the building, the addition itself is 12,277 square feet. But because a good portion of that, a good portion of the addition plus the existing parking area is on existing parking. So we're putting a building on top of pavement, or we're excavating pavement to put a building in a good portion of it.
See. And a roof runoff, what you are doing there, can you show me?
The roof runoff will be piped to the basin. That was incorporated in the drainage analysis, that the roof runoff would go into the basin to be infiltrated.
Directly, right? Is it going
Correct.
directly?
Yes.
And,
It's clean. It should be clean water because there's no,
correct.
it wouldn't have a chance to get any contaminants in it.
No, I understand that, yes. And the same thing about the tree, losing trees is also my concern. And if you could consider about that solar panel, what Gail was mentioning, that would be really good. I think that this is a, this is a better or much better place here or opportunity to place the solar panel. So I would tell you to consider that.
Okay. Ed?
Oh, after listening to all my other commissioners, I can't see anything else I got in question, so I'm fine.
Thank you, Ed. How about Bill?
Couple of items. In terms of the tree cutting, I'm not going to duplicate what everybody else has said, but you did mention that your basin is somewhat oversized for the calculations that you had done
It's designed for the 100-year storm.
for the 100-year storm.
So it's,
The reason I'm mentioning that is that one of the factors that never is really calculated into the stormwater plans is how much water those trees are currently taking out of the ground and will not be doing in the future. So that'll be an additional load to the stormwater treatment when those trees are not there. So, I think the fact that if it's oversized, that would be allowing some room for error from those calculations from the lack of trees being there in the future.
correct.
I also saw the item in the maintenance plan for the infiltration basin saying regular maintenance should include mowing, fertilizing, liming, and pest control, and that was as if it was in the infiltration basin, so.
Right, I will get that from.
Okay.
I have that note.
Yep, we all saw that. Ooh, our spider sense was tingling, right? Is that what they say? What about snow removal in this area? Is there a plan for that?
There is room around the edges for pushing of the snow up into, up off of to the north, to the east, and,
The parking spaces here?
right. So there would be able to push that snow up and off. We do propose Cape Cod berm there so that the plows can push up and ride over.
So it's gonna be pushed off the pavement into the woods, basically?
Right, and then as it melts, it can infiltrate into the ground up in that area.
Yep, okay. The existing, catch basin, you probably mentioned, the existing catch basin shown in the plan there, that is being replaced?
Yes, that is being replaced with a deep sump and a hood to allow for to get the TSS removal.
The existing building, its roof runoff, does any of that, I'm assuming that just flows onto the pavement somewhere? From previous design?
I think that would be a good,
I'm wondering, is any of it likely to be captured in this new improvement on the existing catch basin? You think if it flows that way, and do you know where it comes off the building?
No.
Okay, I'm just curious, because if that was the case, then some of that might end up in the treatment plan there as well. Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm last. I think I have a couple of things. Could you explain in the forebay? I understood what you said about infiltrating and the first half inch and so forth. So if there is then a rush of water, are you going to disturb up the I mean, the forebay is going to have the pollutants in the bottom. Is it going to stir it up and then overflow the berm and then discharge? Somewhat, maybe?
Somewhat, yeah. I mean, it's fair to say. It's the whole point of the train is to, the catch basins take out the sands and the heavy solids, the trash. The forebay would take out the medium size and then the infiltration basin. And that's kind of the point of, making sure that there's regular maintenance that.
I mean, right, that essentially is the honest answer. If you get a really rush of water, some of it's going to resuspend.
Correct. And
So, given that answer, the reason why I led with that is because I have a question. Would the plan be compromised if you took the roof water and sort of spread it out over, if you had less water, or you had a way of handling the roof water during a major storm so that when it overflows, you just discharge it to the back? Would that upset the runoff calculations and all? Because that way you would maintain a lower flow through that forebay basin. Or would it, alternatively, would it be, and you don't have to have the answer now. If this is something you could look at, you could say that too. But what I'm asking is, would you take the roof runoff from the addition and go into not the forebay, but the after bay? I don't know what it's called.
yeah, I mean, I was just about to say that if that would be because it is clean water and essentially it doesn't need that extra.
In the forebay, and you had less risk of resuspending the solids and shoving them out and it wouldn't cost, I don't think it would cost your client very much to do that, I don't think.
Yeah,
I don't see that as a problem.
Does that sound, in your judgment though, I mean, I'm not trying to design it for you. I'm asking if that sounds reasonable to you.
No, it definitely sounds reasonable and it's.
Would that affect the phosphorus?
The area is already calculated into the.
Doesn't affect the phosphorus.
Rooftop should be fairly, the rooftop.
No, I'm not saying the rooftop is dirty. I'm saying the
calculations.
The basin is where the phosphorus reduction is taking place. And if you're flushing in more clean water into there, my earlier point of it getting stirred up and overflow.
But isn't the phosphorus in the forebay with the first flush?
A good portion of the phosphorus should be in the forebay, but then any additional, to be honest, any additional would go into the other basin, but it's still
substantially less.
It's all under the same storm, I guess it would be the best way to, it's under the same IDF curve is what I'm getting at.
What is is the phosphorus suspended or dissolved typically?
It's typically dissolved. It's
So holding it in the forebay is not going to make it go away until it infiltrates.
Correct. But there will be infiltration in the forebay.
Yes, there will be some there, and then the rest will take place in the other basin. Okay.
I think it'd be a better system because where most of the pollutants are, there's less chance of resuspending in a higher storm.
Yeah, and it's already calculated for that area, so it would just be a matter of.
That would be great. So could you two guys take a look at that? Perhaps I'll make a note.
Yeah, we can definitely take a look at that.
Okay, thank you. Another thing, all of the pavement along the bigger building, you're not doing anything there, and it's all running down the street
into the storm sewer system.
Correct.
Of course, what happens is when you send it to the stormwater system, it discharges somewhere. It discharges into a wetland probably across the street in, off of Middlesex Turnpike, I suspect. And that, of course, raises water levels and sometimes it floods other people. So we try to, obviously, the purpose of not discharging to let it run into the street is to avoid that, because sometimes you're just transplanting a problem from one thing to another. So with that as the preface, what I'm wondering is, without too much added cost, the way the contours are, do you see on your plan on the right-hand side, the number 12? I don't know if you can see it up there. I can see it on my plan because I have paper in front of me.
Sorry, I'll zoom in.
If you want, you can come look at this.
Looking, Larry?
Yeah, I'm looking at right here,
Okay.
okay? The way the contours go, it would be perhaps not terribly expensive to capture some additional stormwater by essentially putting the way the contours are, it heads right to the edge there anyway. You could possibly put a catch basin and catch some additional stormwater without outrageous amount of cost. There'd be additional cost, obviously, because you're not planning to do that. But maybe without outrageous amount of cost, I was wondering if you could take a look at that, because any additional stormwater from something that's sheet flowing off into our stormwater system is not good.
So we're not increasing the flow, the existing flow.
I know,
We're capturing all the additional.
Oh, I know that. I know, I understand that. What I'm wondering is if it's possible, you could run it by your client and ask them, because it's a contribution to managing stormwater, which is one of the biggest pollution problems in the country now. It just seems like, and I'm not even suggesting that you're required to do that.
I understand.
Okay, so, and the way the contours are going, it seems like you could capture sort of that whole little right side and put a catch basin in there possibly. Now, I don't know if the elevations would support it. That's the other thing.
Well, that's, if we were able to put an infiltration catch basin in there, you're familiar with those, right? Where basically it's a self-contained
goes down
structure, and it will filter water. It'll capture the water and filter it underground. That's a possibility.
This is more of an ask, not.
I understand.
Okay, so,
I mean, that wouldn't put a significant, it would be an additional cost to the project. But if we had to pipe it over to the
I have a feeling the elevations don't support it.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, that's my.
I thought, obviously, if you looked at it for probably 10 or 15 minutes, you'd come back and say, it's probably not possible because you're at 192 and the elevations here look kind of similar. I don't know how the water would flow, to be honest.
Usually when I look at something like this, I always, in the back of my mind, think, how can this go wrong? And it looks to me like there's a building just to the northeast there. And right there.
That's below grade, right?
That would be below us.
Yes.
And by infiltrating in that area where, this building was built in 1963, so we're talking 40, 60 years ago.
You're concerned it might just break out on the slope?
Either out of the slope, or I would hate to have them come back and say all of a sudden that they're having water issues or mold or something like that inside there.
I certainly understand what you're saying.
So that's just the first thing that's.
All I'm asking is, could you you may have good reasons why it doesn't work.
Okay.
And I get it, but maybe you could just take a quick look at it.
Sure.
And see if it's feasible.
I mean, we might be able to do like Bob said, we could possibly do something like a beehive basin.
Right.
Where it would capture some of the runoff, but it wouldn't during some of the smaller storms, but they're not sized to handle a larger, 10, 25, 50-year storm.
Would be a contribution to, obviously.
It would take.
What we try to do environmentally here with our stormwater permitting system.
Right, it would take it lighten the load downstream a little bit, but it would
If you
be
could
a-
take a look at it, it would be very much appreciated, please.
Sure.
Can I ask a related question? On the other side of the property, in the lower left corner of the paved driveway, there's a couple of items in the gray that are called inverts. Right near where the circle number 7 is.
Way down.
To the left?
Where are we
On the
going?
bottom
To the
on the
left-
left.
Lower left of the building itself, the driveway that goes around. Yeah, down in there.
Yep.
There's a little triangle of a piece of property that says invert. Is that where water is currently flowing off of the pavement? It just goes out there?
There.
I believe so.
That would already be going down the slope and towards the wetland.
Correct.
And then down below that on the corner, there's another invert.
I think that might be a sewer right there.
Okay.
Okay, so some of that water that in the existing pavement is already going towards the wetland and not flowing out to the street.
Correct.
Corner, and that's side, all right, good.
Now, I have one more thing, and again, this is an ask, not a requirement of the bylaw at the present time. There's been a lot of talk about trees. Why don't we just formalize, if possible, that it might be useful to consider just planting some trees and, water them the first year and in back there beyond the thing. It wouldn't be, I don't know if it would be a terribly large expense. Let me ask you, Eileen and John, would that be a worthy ask to see if they might be willing to do that?
Well, so I have one so you're actually clearing and grading like 30 feet to the north beyond the parking lot? So what's the purpose of that? Why are you clearing and grading?
That would just be for snow storage in that area. Because when the plows go in, they can push directly up north and then they can push off to the side. And it's in a upland area that would allow for,
I mean, we wouldn't want to destroy any trees that you would plant there, obviously, so it'd have to be far enough back.
I mean, if that was the area you were thinking of, that obviously wouldn't work. So where else could you?
I don't know, I was just gonna ask them as just a good faith ask, if they would just take a look at it. Because trees, you're not gonna get a mature oak tree if you plant something, but I mean, obviously, what are the typical plantings, 1-inch diameter type of thing?
Yeah, so I mean, those are really sandy soils there, so they would have to be watered very frequently, and you'd want like fairly tough, drought resistant, like maybe pitch pine or white oak or something like that. Something that can really handle dry, sandy soils.
I mean, trees have such an environmental benefit for many reasons. I won't have to go in and lecture everybody on that. A lot of people know this now. And it's not required by the bylaw.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
But it's kind of an ask.
Okay.
See if you might consider it. Could we just see if something makes sense in back there?
Okay.
Okay.
What are you proposing? I know the Board of Health asked for some screening trees or something. Are you putting arborvitae's or something else there?
Well,
Is that what that's going to be?
frankly, we were going to use some of the boulders because the issue was their concern was safety more than anything else. And so we've gotten some feedback from the planning board where they've asked for a guardrail. And we've got a big pile of boulders there they're going to stop cars from driving over the edge really well. And it'll be, frankly, it'll be a little more appealing than a guardrail made out of wood, okay?
Right.
In our opinion. So that was our intent to do that because we think the arborvitae is going to get trashed, from, just where they're located.
Right.
And so. Yeah.
All right, that's all I have. So is there anyone in the audience, either online or in-house, I guess, that has any questions or comments for the project at 15 Adams Street, Burlington? Okay, the record should show there is no one else participating. So I have a list of 6 things. Could I just quickly run through it to make sure we're all?
Yes.
So we're going to send the parameters to Eileen for computing percent removal of stuff for some program.
right, the areas that we put into the software to
All right, and you're going to update the percent removals for not counting the deep sub catch basin, which will change a percent or two.
Right.
Okay, and you're gonna remove the fertilizer and pest control references to the O and M plan, because it's not really needed. And you're gonna take a look at the roof runoff to go into the second bay. I don't know if there's an official name for it. I call it the second bay or something. Okay. And you're going to take a look at potentially some type of either a mini or some type of infiltration basin right around the 192 contour on there, because it just directs the water, and just from that section, seems to throw it right at that. Okay, and then the last thing is trees, which we've had more conversation than anything else. Yes.
So two things. One, there's a hand up.
Yes.
But before you call on the hand, can I just make one request?
Yes.
So there's a lot of ribbons out there and we were trying to figure out what they meant. Red ribbons and whatnot. We were trying to figure out if any of them were marking the limit of work. Do you have any idea?
I think they were for
Remediation.
locating, no, they were actually locating where our test pits were going to be, et cetera. So.
Okay. Is there some way to mark the far end of the basin, the outlet of the basin? I wanted to review the wetland delineation and see how far away it was, but without knowing exactly where the end of your work was, it really wasn't worthwhile for me to do it. So if you could just, even one stake at the far end of the basin would be fine.
So you want to pull that plan?
Oh, yeah.
And just giving us a little bit of direction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He'll-
thanks.
Yeah, can you maybe tell them where?
What are we doing here?
Okay.
Oh, he's just,
Looking at the plan to
He just wants to
delineate the
hear ideas
location of
about
the base. I just want to understand what point he's talking about.
kind of want.
So the closest of the grading. So yeah, just about, yeah, right around there.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
So you want the outside of the grading point?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Just as,
Closest work to the wetlands, I think is what you're looking
yeah,
for.
yeah.
Okay, yep.
All right, so I think I saw Brenda Rappaport. She's chair of the planning board, I believe. Brenda,
Yes,
would you like to say a few words, please?
yes, thank you. I just wanted to note, the folks are talking about a guardrail. We weren't necessarily looking for a guardrail. What we're looking for is more trees, more greenage, just for separation, not a guardrail, but just for the record. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else that's online? It's hard to see the screen, like seeing a hand up, but I'll try. Anyone else who wants to make a comment on this? Okay, so Eileen, is it reasonable to assume that we might be able to issue the permit at the March 24th meeting?
I think it probably is.
Okay, based on what we've heard. So you have a few things to look at, but I didn't see any major showstoppers here. And we'll get that out for you at that time and after we go through the 7 items that we had on the list.
And you have a planning board meeting next week, you said?
Yes, we're meeting on the 17th with the planning board.
So will we send them some comments about our concerns? Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, I don't need a motion since they're agreeing to it in person.
You need a motion, you need to vote to continue.
Yeah.
Roll. Do need to vote to continue?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Could I have a motion to continue the hearing for the erosion sedimentation control permit for the project located at 15 Adams Street until the March 24th meeting of the Burlington Conservation Commission? Is there a motion?
So move, Bill.
Second?
Second, Gail.
Dawn, how do you vote?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Indra?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes by a vote of 600. The 15 Adams Street hearing is continued to the March 24th meeting.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great.
Good night. And
Too.
congratulations on your in-person meeting.
Sorry about the,
2 years.
sorry about the rocky start.
Oh, well, hey.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing for 14 Spring Valley Road, requested by Michael Casey. It is to construct a garage, DEP file number 122-667. Mr. Casey, are you here?
Yes.
And with others?
No,
Just you?
just me.
All right. Mr. Casey, I always get paper copies. In 30 years I've been on the commission, that has to be the biggest sheet of paper for a residential project I've ever seen.
I thought I was outsmarting Staples and I got outsmarted.
Yeah, that's fine. I know how to fold. Okay, so would you like, you're our guest, so you probably state your name and your address for the record, and then you may speak. How's that?
Sure, thank you. Mike Casey, 14 Spring Valley Road in Burlington. And the only comments for today is we adjusted the plans to update for compensatory storage. We updated the plans. Actually, we had before, but we haven't really talked much about the stormwater runoff. The new addition. And then we also, at least on paper, and after talking to a number of metal fabricators, the actual kind of cage-like design around the carport simply to secure our belongings.
Okay. Don or Eileen, do you have comments at this point?
Sure. So I don't know if the commission got a chance to look at all the revised drawings and plans. But so basically, what you have is a garage addition. There's like two floors above it. So it's not a garage. It's actually a residential addition with garage. There. Okay. Yeah. There you go. So the garage level. So that basically the addition will be built on piers, essentially 4 piers with open sides on 3 sides. The 4th side is obviously up against the house. So I think it looks okay. It looks like something that might be approvable. I would recommend that the applicant run it by the building department. I did send a copy of it to the building department and got some reply that I didn't completely understand. So I would suggest that you talk to the inspector of buildings and make sure. Sometimes architects draw something that looks good, but it doesn't always work. So I'm just make sure we don't want to go through this and close the hearing and approve it and then find out you need to make something wider or
Complete change.
and also, I know you've had some difficulties with DEP, some confusion about the submittals. It'd be, if we, within the next couple of weeks before the next hearing, hopefully, and Merrill you were dealing with, she'll have a chance. Well, once again, we don't want to close the hearing and approve something and then get a comment from DEP that it's not, that doesn't meet their standards.
How do you get them to kind of pre-approve it that it looks pretty good?
Well, I'll try to call her or email her.
You'll talk to them?
Yeah.
Okay.
You've been responsive, but the second revision that we sent in, or the first revision that we sent in, I didn't think to put the DEP number with it. So they've been assuming it's a completely separate project, completely separate, even residents, and didn't kind of attach the two. So we cleared that up. And then this most recent submittal, which is all the paperwork, I absolutely put essentially like a cover letter with the DEP number on it. And then just to clarify, John, there's essentially 2, 4, 7 piers instead of 4.
7?
Okay.
What's the 7? Oh, because it's this one here at the back.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
yeah, okay, yeah.
To clarify, yeah.
So, I mean, hopefully your architect knows how to do engineering, structural stuff, but I mean, I would definitely want the building inspector to take a look at it, make sure.
Absolutely. I've questioned this from the beginning, that it was even possible. And the architect has, I don't know what page it is.
Plan here, and I weren't sure what it meant.
Say again?
I said, he said something about number 8 that, well, I don't think either John or I understood. Yeah, tell me which page to go to.
Previous page. I don't know the exact page.
Okay.
One more.
You want further up?
Yeah, it's got
Is it-
some drawings
is
on
the
it.
architectural plan, because The,
It's got like the pier, actually, it might be, if you scroll down a little bit, it's on this page on the bottom. One of them has how the piers are constructed, actually. Essentially, there's two concepts. One's like a steel eye bar that's inside of the pier. The other one's rebar constructed. And then the third idea is combined, and it's all architecturally. He said you can do either of them. There's different costs associated, but essentially it won't sink or sag or do anything. You know, that's what the architect says. But and there's essentially what we're doing is we're putting, you know, a room above it, moving my daughter's room, making kind of another family room, and then trying to have a loft for storage, because the way that our houses are built in the neighborhood, there's literally no storage or very, very minimal. So somewhere to put Christmas lights and noise would be really nice.
I mean, this is essentially the way that all houses will be built in the floodplain, you know. It's basically the only way you can really do it. This is only an addition, but a new house in the floodplain, certainly you see it on the coast all the time.
Have you seen things like this in the past?
I haven't seen additions like this, no, but I mean, certainly houses, yeah.
So it should be feasible.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely should be.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right, let's,
Eileen found the part I was referencing where it's essentially a steel I-beam and then there's beams across it. But this is uncommon in the Northeast, not uncommon in warm weather climates. You know, they have the center of houses or in, you know, garages or even the entire first floor in some areas like this that's really open, and then only in the second or third floor would it be enclosed. So this isn't reinventing the architectural design, it's just obviously not common in the area.
okay, let's see if there's any comments. John or Eileen, any further comment, or you're all set? Okay, Dawn, anything further?
No, nothing further.
Gail?
So I just want to kind of support that you do see homes like this in like the mid-Atlantic and New Jersey, along the coast, Berry Islands and so forth, that not just for kind of floodplains, but, you know, coastal areas for, you know, kind of floods from hurricane damage and stuff like that. They're being built like this.
All right, Kent, anything?
Nope, nothing to add.
Indra?
Nothing further.
Bill?
Just one question about the rooftop runoff. You have it going to a small infiltration chamber. Do we have confidence that that will work in a floodplain like this? Is there clearance for it to infiltrate?
Yes.
And how do you know that?
The engineer that now is deployed in Washington, he does this not only for civilians like myself, but for the military. And he did the calculations and put it in the notice of intent, the explanation for not only will it compensate the addition, but it'll also be able to capture the front right of my house that currently isn't in any sort of infiltration system.
Yep.
Although the back, right, and left, I did it myself, but it's, you know, I piped into the ground, put essentially a French drain so that we're able to disperse instead of having to run on the top of the soil.
But my concern was whether this chamber has got sufficient clearance to groundwater underneath it.
Absolutely.
Did you do a test pit or something, or determine where the groundwater was?
In the back, I have a pool, and we had to replace the liner. Pool's about 8 feet deep, and the 7.5 feet is where the flood water was. So we have that capacity between that's slightly lower than the front of the house. So
so you've seen
the capacity and
a glimpse of where it is.
Yeah, I was like, well, that's not good.
Okay, and Ed?
Just like looking at something I've seen before. My brother lives right on the ocean lines of the Gulf in Florida. Got exactly that same kind of design that he's added on.
Okay.
No comments.
Yeah. Does it look nice?
I'm sorry?
Does it look nice?
Yeah, it's for what he's doing, it's impressive, because he's also getting a tax break too. Because he's in a floodplain.
All right, is this, just curious, is this, the bars and stuff made of stainless steel? Is that what you're going with?
So the metal fabricators that I've been talking with, because nobody has this just in their, it's not in Home Depot or Lowe's or anything, that will hold, my goal in talking to them is that it'll hold up to a soccer ball, because my kids and the neighborhood kids are always around my house, is that it likely will be built out of aluminum. And then there's a number of different coating systems that you can have for corrosion, and powder coating is likely the best. And then we're just talking about the depth and weight of the system so that it won't affect concrete, because we're not hanging it. It's not going to be like suspended in the air. It's sitting on the ground and then attached to the pillars, so it won't have any risk of falling over. And they've all pointed me in the direction of aluminum so far, but I haven't, of course, bought the product or made them purchase it or build it, I'm sorry. But essentially, I'm leaving it up to the experts.
Powder coated aluminum will probably give you 30 years before it's showing wear or something like that. And if you had to, you could paint it anyway. They have specialty paint called aluminum boat paint that is made exactly for that will adhere. It just takes tons of coats to make it go, but it will last forever if you have to do it. But
yeah, the fabricator.
Years from now, you may.
Absolutely. Who knows? The fabricators there say they actually paint it in-house. So they have a number of different application systems that say, we got this one way or the other. We'll give you something reasonable that'll hold up really well.
Right, exactly. Okay, is there anyone in the audience for 14 Spring Valley Road that has any comment? All right, then could I have a motion to continue the public hearing for 14 Spring Valley Road to the March 24th meeting? Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Moved, Don.
Okay. All right, Don, how do you vote?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Indra?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And chair votes yes by a vote of 600. 14 Spring Valley Road hearing is continued to March 24th. Thank you. Okay. Okay, next is we have the continued public hearing, proposed revisions to stormwater management bylaw, general bylaw, Article 14, Section 6. This is a continued public hearing. We are looking at potential changes to go before the Maytown meeting with our bylaw. The intent is to address the issue where we have in residential lots, adjacent lots are more and more, we're getting complaints of flooding when large things are built on a neighboring property. And up to the present time, the permitting system we have is called an abbreviated permit with mostly standard set of conditions and a few additional ones that the staff may put on it. But it is, the plan as it stands now is it's not required to have a stamp plan. It's not required to have an as-built if it's needed, if there's changes. It's not required to post a bond, a performance surety. And it doesn't have as detailed a set of permit conditions as a full permit. So the question that comes before the board, before the commission, is what changes do we want? We held a subcommittee meeting and Eileen tabled some ideas. One of the ideas was, we originally had the idea.
Larry, would it be okay if I shared the slides that we talked about and then, because I have a table at the end that summarizes?
Yeah, let me just finish the last thought here. And then the whole idea was that we might have public hearings for the larger projects or additional impervious surface threshold. And we've talked about a lot of things.
So why don't I invite Eileen to, you had some slides you wanted to show and explain?
Yeah, but just very quickly, because I don't want, oh, hang on, how do I get back to, nope, hang on, I think I have to escape that. To get back to the meeting and then share them. My intent was to just give a visual for some people who are more visual about the background to this, and then what a sort of a summary of what the changes are. So as you can see on this side here, this just gives a summary of some of the changes that we've seen in the last few years. And for the last several decades, actually, we're having much bigger storms than we ever did before. We have hotter days. We have the seasons have changed. I took a look at all the construction permits that were submitted in a 30-month period, and they showed that the footprint of houses in Burlington of new construction was on average nearly 2,000 square feet bigger than the houses being replaced. So we're approximately doubling them in size. Then the impervious surface in that same time, 30 months, increased by over 1.65 acres in projects that were not covered by a stormwater permit. And then this translates to some of these numbers, which are really complicated, but it's basically just saying that for that 1.65 acres of land that is now impervious, we have converted from natural land to impervious. We've increased the annual runoff volume hugely. We're losing approximately something like 350,000 gallons per acre per year lost to groundwater. And we're increasing the phosphorus load by about 1.6 something pounds, which is just, it's important for the town of Burlington since we have to actually account for the amount of phosphorus that we are producing. So again, just for people who don't exactly understand how the stormwater system works, these yellowy orange lines are the storm drain system. This is just an example of a small neighborhood in Burlington. The green arrows show the direction that the stormwater flows. So just taking this house, for example, if this house, which appears to have been connected to the storm drain system, this house releases, say, sump pump water or water from the roof or whatever it is into the storm drain system, it travels down here and is released into this person's yard. So when this house is torn down and a bigger house is put in its place, if the stormwater hits the storm drain system, this person here gets more water in their yard. And this is just another example of another spot in town. The red line is Sandy Brook. And again, these arrows show, the green arrows show that in general, the stormwater is trending this way. It's either going to the wetlands or directly into the river. Everything from Maud Graham Circle goes directly into the river. And this area in the Greens Oval is a spot where there's just been, in the last few decades, or the last several years, there's just been a lot of flooding. I'm not suggesting that the flooding is all due to increased impervious stormwater. It isn't. But it's one of the things that just is exacerbating issues for people in that area. So I just wanted to show people the visual of what the storm system looks like and how it's directly infecting people. And then
The first slide you showed was terrific because it shows that affects a house that's not even necessarily in a butter to the property.
That's
10 houses away.
That's 600 feet away.
Yep.
And that's typical. That's the way it is. You go into this, the water from your property goes into the storm drain system, goes around the corner to somebody else's house.
And most people think it's in the storm drain, it's gone. It's fixed.
Right.
It's not.
Exactly. So this here is exactly what Larry was talking about. I just put a lot of the changes onto a slide. These are what our current bylaw requires. So the current standard permit has a hearing for 20,000 square feet. There isn't an impervious surface threshold, does require an engineered plan. It rarely applies to single family houses. We do require an O&M plan and we do require an as-built plan. And currently for the smaller projects, there isn't an impervious surface threshold. We don't require an engineered plan. It usually applies to single family houses, but we don't require an as-built or an O&M. What we talked about the last couple of meetings were these numbers here, where we were proposing to drop the limits for a proposed standard with a hearing down to 15 feet or an increase of 900 square feet or more of impervious. would require an engineered plan, will apply to every single family house, will require an O&M plan, will require an as-built plan, and would be required to design to the NOAA 14 plus storm. And then smaller permits would be for a disturbance of 5,000 to 15,000 square feet, or an impervious increase of 500 to 900. And then an engineered plan would be required for the larger ones of those. It wouldn't necessarily apply to every single single family house. An O&M plan wouldn't be required, and we would require certification from the PE that the stormwater system was installed as designed. So as Larry described, we had a subcommittee meeting, and none of these things are decided. These were some other alternatives that we threw out there that we I think wanted to discuss a bit more broadly, which is that we would perhaps consider not lowering the threshold for a standard permit for a hearing, but we might leave it at 20,000 square feet. But also, if you are increasing the impervious so that it's 10% of the total lot size, that would trigger the requirement for a standard permit. We would require engineered plans. This standard permit would rarely apply to a single family house. It would require an O&M plan, would require an as-built plan, again, NOAA 14 plus. And for the smaller permit, as we call it, the abbreviated permit, which usually staff deals with, the threshold would be 5,000, which is the same as before, but up to 20,000 before the hearing is required. Or if there's a total of 5% impervious, and then engineered plans would be required for the bigger ones of those. This would apply to every single family house. It wouldn't require an O&M plan, and it would require an as-built plan if the project required a stamp design plan. So I'm happy to leave this up as a talking point, or I can just stop sharing that and we can chat a bit, whatever you want to do, Larry.
Okay.
And so one of the other things we discussed was the abutter notification.
Oh, I didn't have that in.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So we discussed actually for the
You're right.
abbreviated permit, actually notifying abutters that there was an application. There wouldn't be a hearing, but just notify abutters that there's an application in the office that they could view.
And this was for the standard, right?
For the abbreviated.
Right. Yeah, you're right. And I'm sorry, I forgot to put that into the table.
So that would be, at least they'd be alerted to it before the shovel hits the ground, which is normally when they see it now.
Okay, so what I see here essentially is, if we can simplify this a bit, we have two proposals as a result of the subcommittee meeting. So what I see you saying here. And the first proposal is that a full permit with a hearing and the associated requirements would be required, okay, for 15,000 square feet and greater of land disturbance. And then you had something like 900 square feet of additional impervious surface. The second proposal for a full permit is that the land disturbance threshold would be 20,000 square feet or more, or installing 10% of the lot size of additional impervious surface. So what that really means for the alternate proposal, that probably, tell me if this is correct, Eileen, that the vast majority of people, of homeowners, would go to, and the alternate proposal would go to an abbreviated permit, the vast majority. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, 10% of the lots.
On the lot.
2,000 square feet or more.
Right, but so if you were taking you just said the typical house increases in 2,000 square feet. So if you're tearing down a single ranch and putting in a mega mansion, even if you're not disturbing 20,000 square feet, it could still require.
Well, that's an additional impervious, so you'd subtract out the area of the existing house.
Correct, but I already said the 2,000 square feet increase is typical. That would be 10% of the lot.
Did you said that, right?
I did say that. I did say that.
Okay, so what I'd like to table for the commission is the following logic. I've given this a lot of thought. At the subcommittee hearing, we did get some feedback from someone in attendance who said, no, not her. Was it her?
Yes, it was. Oh, sorry, wasn't it?
No,
Okay,
someone in attendance, that the value of having hearings is that
oh, okay.
abutters get to talk face to face with, oftentimes with the people proposing it.
Mhm.
And oftentimes, when I thought about it, it is also true that a lot of times the concerns of the abutters is not exactly related to what we're talking about, 100% focused on what we're talking about. Okay, that's the real value. So what I'm tabling for the commission in order to focus this discussion is that it would seem to me that for the protection of the residents of Burlington, that what we most need is to have the drainage designed properly. That means a stamp plan, and maybe an as-built if there's substantial deviations as well, plan. A performance bond that is almost always returned, but in case there's a problem, it gives you some assurance that there is some money. Almost never happens because most people, when we ask for that and there is a stamp plan, if there is a problem, it gets fixed anyway because there's a licensed engineer. We have a set of permit conditions that help the project to be done correctly. And we note deviations from the permit conditions. And under an abbreviated permit, we could also require a butter notification. So all the tools would be in place. The convening of a public hearing really doesn't add that much if all those tools are in place. Because if a resident comes back and says, we now have a problem and the water is coming in, having the hearing is not going to really help that much. What's really going to happen is we would go back to the designing engineer and we would say, we have a complaint, would you please review it and get back to us? If we have to have a public meeting after the fact because there's a problem, the tools would be available to us so that we could do something. Otherwise, we don't have the tools. We don't have a design plan. We don't have a performance surety that's put up for the project. And we don't have a thing where the abutters were notified and had the opportunity to either come to town hall or to come and talk to the developer, whoever is building the project. So the advantage of not having a hearing and minimizes the inconvenience to the homeowner, because I don't think it adds that much. That was the conclusion I came to after giving this a lot of thought. So with that thrown out to the commission, I'll stop talking and we should perhaps go to Gail first.
So I've noticed, and I think Eileen noticed, there's something in the chat. Do we want to go to those first? If people are.
Okay,
I would say the commissioners first.
yeah, well, normally we go to the commission
Okay,
first.
that's fine, that's fine. So, thanks, Eileen. So I understand that, what you said, and I guess my question is that there are some times when abutters are present on, various items, that there's a question that's asked that, we can't necessarily answer because whoever the applicant can speak to what the concern is, and that actually, their question is answered then, and there's a little bit of give and take going back. And usually, at least in most cases, the abutter's problem is solved, or it's not a problem, but whatever concern they have is answered directly by the applicant. Would what you're talking about allow for that?
Yes, because, well, I think it would, because right now there is, if someone has an abbreviated permit, the way the system works now, there's no opportunity for a neighbor to actually even be aware of what's going on, because they may not even be aware that there's a project until the shovel is going into the ground and then they see what develops. So now they would be notified that there is a project, that an abbreviated permit is going to be issued, and we would require in the bylaw, in my opinion, for the name, address, and telephone number of the developer so that neighbors could get in contact with. Oftentimes what we see here is the questions are not totally related to erosion and sedimentation control or stormwater. Are you going to remove that tree?
what about that fence? Will you replant this? And stuff like that. And a lot of that is, I think the neighbors would be far better off having that information ahead of time so they could look at the plan, ask questions of the staff, and then also call the developer and have those discussions, as opposed to not having any opportunity at all to do any of those things.
I guess that's fine as long as the developers are, willing to give out their, whoever it is that's doing the work is willing to give out their phone number and contact people because, because in that case, you would have to, you're requiring that applicant to call somebody back and, to have that assurance that would occur, that they would respond to the residents. And can you require that? Because what you mean, you're assuming you make a phone call and somebody answers the phone, that doesn't go to voicemail. So, can you require the applicant to, call back residents? Is that?
So we do abutter notifications for the wetlands permitting all the time, as you know, and I was just going to open one up to see. I think what it typically says is, this person is proposing a plan and please contact, you can either contact them or contact the Conservation Department for a copy of the plan. I don't know that we usually have, do we usually have the developers like phone number on there? I doubt
No,
it.
they're instructed to contact the conservation office.
And then you get in touch with the developer.
Well, we'll have the material.
Oh, if they want to review the application, they contact us and we should, sure.
But if they have a question of the developer and you can't answer it, then what?
Well, for a wetland hearing, they could ask at the meeting.
Right, right. I mean,
But I'd also point out, we have a lot of wetland permits that are done under the request for determination of applicability, which has no abutter notification requirement. There's a lot of new houses built as RDAs in this town. There's no abutter notification whatsoever.
okay. All right.
We haven't had major problems with that. I mean, we have a meeting because it's required under the Mass Wetlands Protection Act to have a meeting for those, but there's not a requirement for those for abutter notification.
I mean, Gail, I think,
So I don't disagree with you, Larry. I'm just putting it out there that, if you think that's a way for people to contact the developer, I'm not sure that will happen if you think that's necessary.
well, on the other hand, since we will be issuing an abbreviated permit with a set of conditions, and our staff, they can contact the office, and I'm sure they could facilitate a communication if it's a problem.
Mm-hmm. And, maybe, maybe there's some, way to maybe have, allow abutters to submit, questions or something before, have some kind of process where abutters can submit questions before it's approved, before the permit is signed off on. I don't know.
Yeah, and those questions could be handled administratively by forwarding them to the proponent too.
Sure.
Gail, can I just give you the numbers? In that same 30-month period,
Yep.
there were 95 houses constructed. 24 of those were under wetland permitting. So that's a good chunk. And I didn't actually break down which were RDAs and which were NOIs, but a lot of those were RDAs, and we've never gotten a.
All right, let's hear from a few others and discuss that. Thank you for that comment, Gail. Next is Kent. Do you have any comments on what we're talking about regarding some changes to the bylaw, erosion control bylaw?
Nothing to add at this point.
Okay, Dawn.
It sounds like it's a good process to streamline things a bit, and if we can be assured that that there will be open dialogue between developers and abutters, I think we could give it a go.
Right. Of course, sometimes you have to try things, and if it's not working, then we would have to either issue regulations or under the bylaw or amend the bylaw itself. we can do that too.
Right, I mean, I would see this as a work in progress. There'll have to be adjustments down the road, I'm sure.
Yeah. Indra?
Yes, actually streamlining the process, that would be the key here, how we
Right.
streamline the process. And the communication with the homeowners and the developer. That is also,
Okay.
but we do need these changes.
Yeah.
Definitely, based on our
That's just,
statistics, and we have to tell the people that this is for the best interest of all of our Burlington residents.
Right.
One, we want to protect everybody. And that's why we are making these changes.
right. Ed?
I'm finding it interesting that we've had so many properties that we've looked at, and almost every one of the ones that related to intrusion of water is on a butter. And going through the little process I just recently and in process of doing, following through on a permit, I had to list down each one of those contractors that are in this house. Why wouldn't a permit also be an inclusive item that kind of helps the communication link to who these contractors are, to the abutters who are having a problem? It seems like there's places that are already there that you utilize for getting that kind of a communication going. The other thing that really strikes me, I'm sitting here in this reserve development eyes. What did we do here? My God, talk about water running down a road that probably never was there before. Isn't this worse when you start dealing with something like the size of a development here? Couldn't this thing blossom further out than what we're talking about?
Okay, thank you. Bill, you're next.
Well, I think this is specifically for residential we're talking about, correct? Or is this a generic?
No.
No, it's not. So it would include the major projects that Ed just mentioned. Okay. At one time, we had discussed a permit would always be, a standard permit would always be required for any tear down. Is that now not part of the latest proposal?
That's what we're suggesting.
To me, that made sense. Any tear down would have to have a standard permit because it's such a substantial change to the existing conditions. And it may not disturb 20,000 square feet. There's got to be situations for a standard permit and that level of oversight that don't disturb every square inch of a 20,000 square foot residential lot. It seems to me there should be standard permit required for a major program that's done on a residential lot.
Well, if it's over 20,000 square feet, we're supposed
That's the whole residential lot. The typical residential lot is 20,000. That's the minimum lot.
No, it's about a half acre.
I'm actually, I think I'm missing part of what you're saying, Bill. I'm so sorry.
The minimum zoning requirement for Burlington is 20,000 square feet. And every lot in my entire neighborhood is 20,000 square feet, except mine on the corner, because I got a few extra that was left over. So to get it for no matter what's being done, you're saying, if you tear down a small ranch and put in a mega mansion, without disturbing the entire lot, it's not going to require a standard permit. And that level of oversight.
Unless they increase the impervious by quite a bit.
That's still a lot. Okay.
Well, the main, do you want me to just, you've got the
I've got the
table.
yeah.
Main difference is that it wouldn't be a hearing, but it will be a permit. And they will have to still,
An
supply,
abbreviated permit.
right.
Okay.
It's an abbreviated permit in the sense that there is no hearing. But it doesn't mean they don't have a designed infiltration.
Okay.
It doesn't mean they don't have contours and everything on it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that, that there is not a performance, a modest performance bond required in case there is a problem. And it doesn't mean that the butters were not notified ahead of time before the shovel went in the ground. Okay, so in other words, it's a substantial change and improvement, not only in terms of the neighborhood wondering what's going on ahead of time, but it's a substantial improvement in terms of if something goes wrong, we will have the tools in place to deal with it. How often do we have problems when there is a PE stamped plan? on a project like this.
I can't think of any times really. I mean, that's kind of the point.
That's my point.
That we can be confident that it's being.
That's right. So it's to me, it's just a substantial improvement. And the only thing I would suggest is, Bill, is that maybe 10% of the lot. We're not trying to bring things into a hearing. We want the right number there, 10% of added impervious surface of the lot size. I don't know if that's the right thing. We're not trying to, if the majority of the homes are adding 2,000 square feet, then what we're then doing is bringing them into the formal permit process because of that clause right there.
Right.
And that's what I think is probably not needed. Now, historically, I'll say one other thing. When this bylaw was written, this is the exact same discussion, very similar. And what we came up with is that because of the nature of construction 15, 16 years ago, an abbreviated permit we thought of a standard set of conditions. I was there and, I wrote that thing, but the negotiation was, do we really need to put the homeowners through a hearing process? And the answer was that due to the nature of the construction of the time, which was not adding 2,000 square feet to what they're doing, that we would be fine without it. Now we have a different situation, which is the reason why we're contemplating doing what we're doing. And the situation is that the construction is adding 2,000 square feet on average, and it's much closer to the lot lines, and we're seeing some problems with how water is handled with a plan that is not based on best design practice from a licensed engineer. That's the issue. And so what I'm suggesting is we stay focused on that issue, of correcting that issue, and then we'll see where it goes. If we have to issue regulations, I'm thinking we can always add regulations under it if we need to change how we do things. Okay, we could promulgate regulations, but right now I'm thinking that even if there's not a hearing, it is a substantial improvement and gives us the ability to help a neighbor that thinks they have a major problem from the construction. So, let's go to some people in the audience and see, it's sort of, the issues are kind of on the table. Could you eliminate that?
Did you get all the
Brendan.
commissioners?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did. So I think I see, I can barely see this. Brenda, is that you?
Yes, it is. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to first start off saying adding additional regulations obviously takes time. We all know that.
Right.
There is, you had said we don't know of a specific plan that was approved that is causing an issue. I can candidly say there is a project that is on Wheatland Road that was approved, and neighbors are receiving a significant amount of water in their basement. These folks have, they bought their home, I believe it was 2019. I represented them in purchasing that home. They built a 976 square foot addition on their home. They did not disrupt their neighbors. Next thing you know, their neighbor sold their home. That builder demolished that home, is in the process of building a new home, and now they're getting, again, significant water in the basement. This is not to discount. There are several developers that are within our community who are very skilled and know exactly what they're doing. But there are also new developers, and folks that, have watched, HGTV and think that they know the best of the best and want to, gain the profits of Burlington. And I think that this is a developer who is doing so. And now, the neighbor who wasn't available, if you don't have a hearing, and have that ability to speak with that person, the friction between neighbor and developer is going to be significant. Um, you know, to not allow abutters to actually speak to the developers, prior to a development, I think it is pretty tough. Everybody wants to know who they're working with. Um, in addition, the hearing process is exactly like what we all look for. I know that every time we have a hearing, everyone that wants to know exactly what development is coming to term, they want to be a part of. So I think that, in turn, your board should absolutely, offer the same. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. All right, somebody else would like to talk. I don't see any other hands up, but if is there anyone online or here in the audience that would like to comment on what we're doing? Come on up. You get a microphone.
Gail, at one time you mentioned you saw something in chat. Was there something in chat? We can't see that from here.
That was Brenda.
That was just Brenda. Okay, thank you. Okay.
You obviously state your name and your address, please. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Susan Cadillac. I live at 186 Mill Street in Burlington. I wrote something, so I wouldn't remember everything. First, I want to thank everyone for allowing me and the community to participate in this discussion. It's been very respectful, very open-minded. So I wanted to thank you for that, as well as the subcommittee meeting and following the last public meeting where this was discussed. As was mentioned, a lot of progress has been made. There's still a lot of work to be done to bring this to something that meets the goal of addressing the stormwater management, while also being mindful about the impacts that regulatory obstacles have to residential housing production. And that ultimately dictates who can live in Burlington, who has access to housing, who has the means to absorb the costs of additional regulation. So I think it's important to consider, as you just talked about, Larry, what is the goal and how can we get there? There are a lot of paths to get there. So what are the best paths that will lead us to addressing stormwater, as well as considering the impact on the residents? So I want to be clear that my stance, I'm not anti-stormwater mitigation. I'm coming from a position of creating more balance so that we as a community don't inadvertently put into place more exclusionary housing policy that has historically plagued this entire state. Everything that I talk about is Burlington specific. And I'm happy to hear, Eileen, during your presentation that you mentioned that you're not suggesting that all the flooding is due to increased impervious area. And one of the site that you just showed is a property that I own, and I'm sure that wasn't a mistake that you included that. And you showed that the previous home built in 1955 was already connected to the stormwater drain, because there have been issues, there are issues, previous to redevelopment of lots. And we got approval from engineering to reconnect because there is a lot of water flowing in that neighborhood. It goes down to a stream at the bottom of the hill. There was a neighbor behind us who was draining their sump pumping gutters onto our property. We spoke to them, we resolved it, they rerouted them. They were great, and that's typically how we deal with things. But there are water drainage issues, and there are a lot of homes on developed lots that are connected because of high water tables. That home that was at that site was only 7 feet from the lot line. It was not in conformance with zoning. The new home is, as I said, the water there is not from the new development. There was already water issues on that site. So I'm glad that you showed that as an example. As far as the public hearings go, I'm pretty opposed to the public hearing requirement being proposed for by right, single family and small residential projects. What I'm hearing and what we heard during the subcommittee meeting was that abutters want to use this as an opportunity to negotiate with developers but if the goal is stormwater management, does that really fit in? And I've been told multiple times, and I've heard said that the goal of this series of bylaws, not only the stormwater management bylaw, but also the groundwater separation bylaw, is to get single-family projects into public hearings. So I just wanted to share a 2018 study by 3 Boston University researchers examined the influence of neighborhood participation in public hearings, specifically around housing policy across 97 Massachusetts cities and towns. In an article summarizing the study, it was noted that overall, the study found that the participants in these community meetings were older, more likely to be white, male, and own a home. Women, for example, made up just 43% of commenters at community meetings, even though they represented 51% of registered voters. One of the researchers was quoted by the Boston Globe saying, "People who show up to these meetings are overwhelmingly opposed to construction of new housing in ways that are out of whack with public opinion, and socioeconomically, they're not representative of their communities." We often hear as a pushback, "Not in my backyard. I don't want that in my backyard," from longtime residents who are intent on maintaining status quo. They want to close the drawbridge, so to speak, on any type of new housing that doesn't look like theirs. We see it over and over again. We hear people who say, "I have a split, I have a cape, I have a ranch from the 1950s and 60s. That's been just fine for me." There's no reason for anyone else to want to build other types of housing, whether it's a big house or condos or rentals or anything different. We hear the same attitude over and over again. We saw it play out when a 3-family home that was proposed to be rebuilt on Lexington Street was killed by neighborhood opposition. That was a real missed opportunity to build 3 smaller housing units that by design would have provided an opportunity to a different group of home buyers other than the ones we see that are buying the by right single-family homes that is currently being built on that site, because that is what our zoning supports. That's what our regulations support, and that is why we are seeing this housing. Housing for, that could have been smaller units for police officers, hospital workers, teachers, people who live in town being able to, people who are working in town being able to live in town. That's the kind of housing that's missing. And adding overregulation will disproportionately impact that population. A lot of our housing is older, it's functionally obsolete, it's in a state of disrepair, and the building of larger homes, as I mentioned, is fully supported by our myopic single-family zoning density guidelines that control the yield and therefore the ultimate cost of housing units on a particular piece of land. The irony of this discussion around these new bylaws being focused on the goal of having small residential projects subject to a public hearing in the face of the spirit of the recent mass housing choice law, which aims to address the housing supply shortage and curb frivolous delays to housing production, has not been lost. And I appreciate that the board is discussing and talking about the less stringent alternative of a butter notification. But I think we really need to consider what the goals are in that and what the goals are of the bylaw. I'm also concerned about lack of input from outside consultants as well as perspectives from people who are impacted. Have we talked to, or do we have reports from an engineer with relevant experience around single-family projects? I'm concerned that the requirements are being lifted from the EPA regulations that are meant to apply to disturbance of 1 acre or more. And is it appropriate for those parameters to be applied to smaller projects? Or should we think about different parameters? I'm wondering how this group has sought input from residents who would be impacted by these changes and how their perspectives have been taken into consideration. What do we have any sample projects where we're looking at what's the impact of time, additional cost? How are these parameters, and I know you guys have said that you're not sure if the impervious areas and footprints, if they're at the right numbers. I think that's worthy of some study and some time to think about, are we making rules that will have unintended consequences where projects that maybe you didn't mean to be included end up being included in bylaws and vice versa? And what, if any, less restrictive measures have been considered to achieve stormwater management? I think that when tasked with creating guidelines that affect access to housing, something that everyone needs, there's a responsibility to consider both the positive and sometimes unintended negative consequences of what's being put in place. By not considering less restrictive measures that address stormwater mitigation concerns while taking the time to study real-world impact, we're perpetuating the implementation of systematic policies that always have and will continue to result in more of the type of housing we love to hate, as we're seeing being built on the Lexington Street site. Overregulation creates an exclusionary environment where only the residents who have the resources of abundant time and money to get through the hurdles will stay here. The Pioneer Institute for Public Policy Research, I'm almost done, I promise, in conjunction with the Rappaport Institute for Greater Boston at Harvard University, released a report entitled Regulation and the Rise of Housing Prices in Greater Boston. Overall, they found that each additional form of regulation is associated with a 10% decline in annual permits. In their report, they noted that the reductions in permits caused by the regulations has had a significant effect on regional housing prices. Onerous systematic obstacles to residential housing are linked to socioeconomic inequality and racial segregation. Based on all the hard work I'm seeing being done in this board, with everyone working on this board and across numerous committees here in Burlington, I think we have a responsibility to recognize and consider how introducing hurdles into the standard by right residential housing permit process would have unintended consequences for Burlington and ultimately who has access to our housing. I know that was long. I know there's a lot of stuff in there. I will send it to you.
I absorbed every word, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
A couple things. One, I mean, I think there is an equity issue here, but we're looking out for the equity of the people who live at the bottom of the hill, the people who live in the wet areas who are getting water from other places. It's not always a McMansion. It could be something that was built 20 years ago, but the water all goes downhill, and there's a lot of properties who get flooded. They get flooded because of land use decisions that were made decades ago. They're living in houses that wouldn't be built today, but they're still suffering the consequences. So, I mean, that's what we're looking out for. But I do agree that it's not the Conservation Commission's role to introduce the developer to the neighbors and, you know, get them to come in and shake hands. That's not our role. That's not what we're supposed to do. And I agree that having a public hearing for every house is, I don't think it's a lot of time and I don't think it's a lot of expense, but I don't think it's necessary. And it does, once you have a permit process where they're coming in for a public hearing, it increases the chance that the neighbor may appeal it frivolously, which could seriously delay a project. So, I mean, I'm firmly in the camp that we can achieve our objectives for the smaller abbreviated projects without a hearing.
But by still notifying abutters.
Right. Maybe we come up with one sheet that the developer brings back in that's signed by the neighbors that, you know, they were notified that the Conservation Department has plans or whatever. Okay. But just direct abutters. I mean, not like, you know.
All right, is there anyone else out there that would like to make a comment before we go back?
Andrew, Tracy had her hand up.
Tracy?
Yeah, so I got, Scott Ave,
State your full name for the record and your address, please.
Andrea Tracy, 4 Kinney Ave.
Thank you. You have the floor.
I'm gonna try to keep this brief. I had a friend, Bob O'Hagan, in a little cottage on Scott Ave. There for years, old guy. We did everything we could to support him. He passed on, I guess. Murray bought his property. So Murray bought from his property all the way up Scott Ave, because it's the private road. It's a slope. I use it if I want to go running for butt, you know, my problem is all the green space is disappearing. This is a slope from Taylor Ave to Scott Ave that's like more than an 8% grade. And it's a private road that has no drainage. There's no storm drains anywhere. They're going to now put 2 houses there and 4 houses off the top of Kinney Ave at Taylor, supposedly. There's no green space left in my neighborhood. On a regular day, you got there are turkeys and everybody else and ducks and all the wildlife. It's a wildlife trail from here to along the Haynes Park area. We have no green space left. We have no drainage. If they develop houses everywhere, where's the drainage going? That's all.
Thank you, Andrea. Next, I think I see Jeff DeBona with a hand raised. I can barely see it, but I think that's what I see.
You might have to unmute yourself.
Were you calling on me? I was cutting out.
Yeah, yes. So state your
I'm
name.
sorry.
Please state your name and your address. Thanks.
Sorry. Jeff DeBona, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3, 3
Sure.
Michelle Drive. So I just wanted to thank you guys for the work you're doing. And there was just one thing that came up, and I wanted to express on that about people not being able to buy into the town. I've been a lifelong resident for 35 years, and I'm seeing more of my friends moving out of town. It's kind of sad. So if you guys can take into consideration anything and looking at that of kind of making it so it's more affordable so people can stay in town or come into town. That's all I had to say. Thank you guys very much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Okay, so anyone else? So we can turn it back to the commission. I'd like, before we go back to the commission for follow-up comments, I'd like to state for the commission's consideration, what we're trying to do here is, there's about 4 or 5 things here. We want to avoid unnecessary inconvenience to a homeowner. That's the first thing. We're mindful of that. So that's always in the background. That's number 1. Number 2, we need to put sufficient regulation in place to handle a problem that we've seen with homeowners getting flooded. I mean, adjacent homes getting flooded from construction. We want to protect the abutters. We'd like to avoid, as John said, frivolous appeals. But we also want to, given all those things, we want to have the tools in place so that the homeowner knows that it's done properly. And the abutters will have some assurance if they look into it that it's being done properly by a licensed, with a stamp plan by a licensed engineer. And if there is a problem, the permitting tools will be in place so that we have something to go back to and handle it. When the few things that we've had that have come before us, I just feel like we were at a loss to really know those tools were in place. Okay, so as John said, facilitating communication, that's not the purpose of why we're here. I think I know that the staff has gone out of their way to help homeowners. If a homeowner calls Eileen or John and says, I'm trying to reach somebody, or I have an issue with this, they will go out of their way to help them either explain it, or they will put them in touch with the people who are proposing whatever it is that they have an issue with. And so, I mean, I know that they will do that. That's been a tradition for the last 30 years for the Conservation Commission. So those are the goals that we're trying to accomplish. Having said that, if the goal of 10, if the threshold of 10% of the lot area for additional impervious surface is bringing all those projects back in, even though it's not 20,000 square feet, that is not the intent of what I think is needed here. That's the problem with that. Okay? Compared to having a mega mansion done by an abbreviated permit with no tools in place and not done by a licensed necessarily, a design engineer for the infiltration, not necessarily, it could be, then getting those tools in place is a major leap forward to assure both the homeowner and the neighborhood, particularly if there's a problem, that we have the tools in place to go back to if it's necessary, and it was done properly. And usually, when it's a professional engineer doing the work, it usually is, it's not an issue. So I'd throw that out. Where is the commission now on this? Oh, and the other thing we had is we all know that we're turning the town into an urban heat island. We all know this. Trees are being taken down. There is an enormous proclivity in Burlington. I don't know about other towns. It seems in Burlington to knock down trees, unfortunately. And that maybe that's a holdover from the way the run-of-the-mills homes were done in the old days. And so you always just clear the lot and build the house. But obviously, I think we have to rethink this. So do we want something? We talked at the subcommittee meeting, it hasn't been talked about yet, that right now the bylaw does not have anything regarding a tree replacement requirement. It would seem to me that one of the common concerns by abutters is that tree on my line going to be taken down? It may be a reason for construction if you're building right out to the edge, but it might be reasonable, we talked in the subcommittee process, to have something in the bylaw that says if you knock down something within the 15-foot zoning allowed lot line, because it has to be because of construction reasons, that they replace the tree and back on a one-to-one basis. It would seem that it'd be a step forward, given what we know about the value of trees in terms of what's happening to our climate in our neighborhoods. So I'd throw that out there too. I mean, maybe we can always regulate more and require more aggressive tree policy, but going from no regulation to saying something like that is a step in the right direction. So who would like to talk?
Well, the point about trees, I think, is one of the most significant things that we talked about in the subcommittee meeting. I think the idea of protecting at least the rear setback on a property and not allowing cutting that isn't essential to the project is a critical improvement.
Like a 15-foot
A
setback
15-foot setback.
from the lot
and
line.
Just the rear, even if it was just the rear. I can understand if you have the sides and the rear, you're enclosing a lot in that case. Because you're talking about 30 feet out of 100-foot, width. But even if it was just the rear setback, at least the designated part of each property should be protected from tree cutting if it's feasible and still have the project. We're not going to try to say you can't build your garage because there's a tree in the way. But, if there's no need to cut that to produce the result that you're trying to get, I think that should be in this bylaw.
You suggesting perhaps like that kind of language for 15 feet on the right, 15 feet on the left, and 15 feet on the back?
I think just the back.
Or just the back?
Just the back.
Well, what if someone wants to cut a tree on the sides? Okay, and that's often an issue between neighbors. They're cutting my big oak tree and, it's not on their property and they're taking it down. Maybe they have a right to take it down. Maybe they have a need to take it down. Okay, for construction purposes, I think Susan Cadillac said sometimes for construction, you have to take it down because of what's going on. But having a requirement to replace that tree at least may not satisfy the neighbor, but at least it would be environmentally sensitive in the right direction.
Can I just point something out just to do with that discussion? As far as I'm aware, the zoning setbacks means you can't have a building there, but there are sometimes driveways. They can put a driveway in.
Oh,
So-
the rear setback.
Oh, no, not in the rear setback. I just mean the sides.
Oh, yes.
I was just pointing that out.
And so if that was part of the project, the tree would come down, I suppose, if the builder really wanted to do it.
but the bylaw would say if you took down 3 trees, you plant them back. Does that,
I'm almost picturing the rear setback being something like the 20-foot no disturb zone and a wetland thing. You know, this is a no disturb zone. A waiver can be granted for reason, or for cause, or for some justified reason. You know, something like that.
what you're saying is we're not trying to prevent the construction of the project
No, no.
as the owner wants it.
Not at
That's
all.
not the point.
That's
at all.
not.
Let me go to Susan, because you have a comment on this particular point? Okay, and then we'll go to other commissioners if they want to follow up on this point or other points.
I think something like this might be worthy to look at, looking at a site plan, you know, as you said, you know, in the front and the side, sometimes there's driveways. Sometimes people want to put fences. You know, I think maybe, you know, this, you know, might apply to new construction going on and, you know, the front would have, doesn't always have to be clear, but for the most part, for over dig and driveways, you need clearance. And then on the sides, you know, for if depending on the setbacks, you need room for over dig, for safety, for trenches, for access. So, you know, maybe there's some sort of medium during new construction where where the restriction starts at some point on the sides. Maybe it's not the full sides. Maybe it's, you know, maybe it's in relation to the footprint being proposed. Maybe it's in relation to the project, but there's some standard measurement of, you know, X number of feet around, you know, and this is what I mean by looking at specific site plans and what, you know, crafting language that makes sense, you know, and then.
So as a builder, let me just ask you then,
Yep.
clearly, is it reasonable that if there's 2 large trees, one on each side, and you need to take them down, that the bylaw would require that if they're within the 15 feet zoning size setback limits, then the bylaw says you must replace 2 trees in back 15 feet somewhere, if possible?
I mean, I think, you know, I think if it were, you know, simple like that and it wasn't like, oh, we've got 2 trees now, you know, now we have to go to months of public hearing. I think if it was very straightforward, like, okay, we do a site visit, we look at it, we're going to take down within this building zone where the construction will take place, where whether it's a 1-for-1 or whatever it
Not
is.
suggesting that that situation requires a public hearing at all.
Okay, right. So if it were even just
Just straightforward.
demo, walkthrough, straightforward, then you know, I don't think that.
I mean, it is a major step in where we have no provision at all for the word trees in the bylaw at the moment.
Right.
It's at least one step forward.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Allows for yard, it still allows,
Yes.
you know, for safety.
This is, people say that all the time, I want a yard. Well, why can't you have a yard with a tree in it? You know, people don't want a tree in their yard.
Right.
But my yard can't have a tree in it. You know, that is to me,
They want to play baseball, football, hockey.
I never see that happen after the.
Pools.
Oh, swimming pool is another issue, of course.
Yeah, no trees in the.
But you know, and I totally respect what you said in the previous meeting and this one about the sidelines being different from the rear setback. That's why I was sort of changing my stance to say, you know, protect the rear setback with more strong language, and the rest of the property, something like language of, you know, tree cutting should be kept to a minimum, you know, if possible, or something like that.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of our lots are 200 feet deep, so maybe it's, you know, looking at where the footprint lies, and, you know, there may be reasons why a house has to go further back, but in general, I don't think we see too many. I know we see some, but I don't think we see too many new homes you know, being set way far back. on lots.
Yeah, I mean, if there was some unusual lot configuration and it wasn't the 200 feet, people apply for waivers for various reasons, and we have on wetlands, we have a 20-foot no disturb zone, and sometimes they go a couple of feet in, they ask for a waiver, and they've looked at all the alternatives, and when that happens, we do grant a waiver. We historically do not try to stop construction based on the rules. Sometimes the rules that we have in place, it doesn't apply 100% to everybody. I mean, that's sort of the way we are.
The people that are already in there before the rules existed are grandfathered. You know, and now you just can't build any closer than you used to be to the wetland.
Let's
You know,
go to
we
bed,
can do
Brett.
something
Let's
like
go. You can sit there if you want. No one's claiming that seat. So, Gail, you've heard a lot of stuff, and I've certainly done more than my fair share of talking. I'd like to give you a chance to keep going.
Yeah, agree for, kind of straightforward projects that, to streamline the process would be a good thing to do, overall. And I think, whether it's conservation, it's, the town takes it on, planning, that the town should look at some kind of tree conservation laws. I mean, some other towns have enacted them. And I mean, it's important for stormwater, it's important for aesthetics, it's important for clean air, for climate change, it's important for a lot of things.
Right.
Larry, can I just say something? So normally I'm the host and I'm doing it from home and I mute the chat so people can't chat. But I'm the host, but my computer's over there and I forgot to mute the chat. So a lot of people are putting things in chat. I would ask if you've got something to say rather than chatting, because you can't see what they're saying, but
I can.
people on WebEx can. So instead of chatting, please just raise your hand if you've got something you want the whole room to see. Thanks.
Yeah, I can't see the chat, so if you've said anything you feel is important, please speak up. And just start talking and we'll recognize you. How's that?
Raise your hand.
That's what I mean, but I mean,
okay.
If I don't see it, start talking. All right, Kent, do you have anything more on this?
No, I just think one thing, Don made a good point. I mean, if it's, even if you implement something and you can always it's going to be a work in progress and it can be amended in the future. I think that's a valid point. So I'm glad Don brought that up. That's a really good point.
Right. Thank you.
We've gone to town meeting. This will be like the second time in the last 2 years we've gone to town meeting with stormwater bylaw. So we don't want to be doing it a lot.
Right, right. How about Ed? Do you have anything more on this?
I think you got the right concept. The word streamline I kind of like, but it's got to be with authority at the same time. Comment that I made, you've got permit, that whole word permit going across the board for each one of those conditions of square footage. And it's got to be built into that on the front end, that this is what you're going to be up against to actually get something approved. And I'm sorry.
No, please keep going, Ed. You're doing fine.
We've seen the waivers, that we've all been involved with, but I don't think we even ourselves have taken in full consideration to the people that are abutting until we actually hear from them. But the question should be asked, on the front end of this whole thing, and that's what makes it streamlined. So I think that's where I'm at. I like everything I'm hearing. I think it's got to be something that's what we're talking about, the tools to make things better than they are, so that everybody in a quadrant, all 4 pieces of property that abut, is going to make everybody happy in the long run.
Okay, thank you. Let's run through just the rest of the commissioners. Dawn, do you have anything further? Then we'll go to Brenda after we ask the commissioners again. Yes. Dawn Bernstein?
Nothing further.
Thank you. Indra, anything further?
Well, nothing further except it's very difficult where we draw the line, but we definitely need something.
Okay, I think I've called on the commissioners. Brenda, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I want to ask, Mr. Chair and the board, do you guys feel that you're intimidating, or there is a reason why somebody shouldn't be able to present in front of you?
I've been called a number of things, and one of them is not intimidating.
Okay. Well,
Thank you. Thank you for raising that, but I don't think that one I've heard yet, unless you're suggesting it.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I asked that question because, as also a member of the community, if there's something that I want to propose, I feel like there should be that open line of communication, with any board, so that, if there's something that I'm looking to do, that other people can chime in, not only as a chair of the planning board, but as a member of the community. So if I was going to build something on my home, I would like to know what my neighbors think.
Yeah. Well,
I feel.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I feel that, again, the folks that are on this WebEx tonight aren't necessarily the people that I'm concerned with. The people who I'm concerned with are the people who are trying to cash in on, the ability to develop in this community. And that's my greatest concern. I want the ability and I want the community to have that ability to chime in when somebody is going to develop. And, taking that ability away should be a grave concern, because if they don't have that ability to chime in, what is that developer doing that, is a cause for concern? Our meetings don't have to be lengthy. And I know as chair, you can direct, the development is exactly how you want it to be, and, to develop the conversation to, get to the end result. So to take that away from the community, I think is really sad, because we're here to serve the community. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. I will tell you, Brenda, I completely understand what you're saying. In the ideal world, we would have every project of any significance come before us. I will admit, I am somewhat biased in that regard, because when we put this bylaw in place in 2005, 2006, there was substantial pushback from the homeowner community, people who were doing additions and large additions or whatever. They did not want to go before the hearing. I don't know why. I mean, maybe it's not that big of a deal from either your perspective or my perspective, but that was the main issue of discussion at the time. And we're trying to get something through the community of Burlington through town meeting. Now, maybe it's changed because of some of the things. Maybe they're thinking differently now, but I can tell you that that was the very main issue why it was set up to begin with. So we're not taking anything away. Right now, the neighbors have no opportunity to know of the project until it starts getting built. Okay, and so we're actually proposing something a little different, and we're putting insurances in place, so to speak, so that if a problem does occur, there is something to go back to. So it's I'll just say that I am biased because of that history, so I will tell you that. So,
And do you mind if I respond?
oh, no, of course not, of course.
Thank you. I completely respect that, but we're also talking about, a completely different realm of development where we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 50 years ago. You can't, the ability to build right now is a completely different realm. Talking about water table, talking about water displacement, $1,000, 1,000 square foot home is a completely, like, that's not even a thing anymore. People don't want that. And people are talking about, the sister bylaw that the planning board is putting forth. And both you and I share the same common goal. No one at the end of the day should be able to build and displace water so that it impedes their neighbor's ability to have quiet enjoyment on their home. And if anyone else, the builder, the homeowner, wants to say otherwise, they're in the wrong. If you want to build something else, you want to, taint the existence of what is actually existing, and that's going to impede on your neighbor's property, that's not okay. You can do whatever you want with your property as it stands right now. And the proposed bylaw with the planning board says, if you want to dig into the water table, we're okay with that. What it says is, if you're going to do that, make sure that you're not going to mess with your neighbor's property. So I think, we both share the same common goal. My point is that if a neighbor wants to speak, I think a neighbor should speak. And if somebody wants to build, they have the right to build. But everybody should make sure that whatever they're going to do at the end of the day is not going to displace, discourage, or burden your neighbor's property. And that's the main, and that should be the pure common goal for both you and I. Thank you.
All right, everyone has been very thoughtful, and Brenda, your comments have been very thoughtful and give us a lot to think about. Thank you. John?
So I think what it comes down to is that, does the Conservation Commission trust the conservation staff enough to be able to review the applications for under the administrative permit without a hearing? So does the commission feel like the staff can handle it, or does the Conservation Commission think that every single new house in Burlington has to go to the full board for review?
Partial answer to that. I don't think any of us doubt your ability to handle these abbreviated reviews. But abutters should be notified, and when abutters have questions, do you want them all to come to you? Do you want to be the ones who have to tell them, here's where the developer's phone number is? I mean, is that you would become the conduit for that if we didn't have a public hearing?
That would be fine.
Okay. I mean, that is adding a burden to you and your work.
The way it is now.
I'd like to,
That's a notification.
John, I'd like to give it some thought about how much confidence I have in your ability.
Sure, don't blame you. Can I just talk to the logistics now? I mean, Susan's on the bylaw review committee. I don't know how many times you meet before town meeting. Any idea? Okay, you only, okay, so they only have 2 more meetings before the May town meeting. It doesn't seem like we're reaching closure on this. So I would just urge you to, if you really think that we can make May town meeting, we do need to make some decisions. Otherwise, they need to be thinking about.
Could I suggest a subcommittee to go over the details and so forth?
Sure.
The warrant articles are due on the 18th of March.
Well, we have a placeholder in.
They already submitted.
I'm invited to.
No, it was the deadline was long since passed. Those are general.
That's general.
Yeah, we have a placeholder in, and I was invited to meet the bylaw review committee next Tuesday?
Okay.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, what time?
I think it's 6:30.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure it's fair to the bylaw review committee to ask them to start reviewing a bylaw that
If
isn't,
it's not
ready for them to review.
Right.
And from the last time we went before them, we met, or Eileen met with them probably 6 or 8 times before town meeting.
Yeah.
Logistically, this is beginning to look like May is like pretty,
unless we can wrap
Hi.
it up.
Who's there? Is that Barbara?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Yes, may I speak?
Yes, please. We haven't heard from you at all tonight, so go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I missed the beginning of the meeting, but I did just want to chime in on a couple of things.
an address.
And name, Barbara, name and address stated for the record,
Oh,
please.
sorry. Barbara LaRue, 10 Woodside Lane. I'm also a member of the planning board.
Right. Okay,
And
thanks.
there are just a couple of things that I wanted to chime in on. I don't think we can underestimate the importance of allowing neighbors who are next door and neighbors who are downstream, the ability to come to a public meeting and express their concerns. And I have complete faith in John Keely and the rest of his staff. But there is a difference between staff and elected officials. You and I are elected officials. We answer to the voters. We answer to the residents here. And it's not a better thing, it's a different thing. And I do think that it's important to make sure that neighbors have that opportunity. One of the things that Brenda was really stressing is that it's really important to make sure that when people are adding on to their house, they do not infringe upon their neighbor's property. And the thing that I think we need to remember, because someone said something about this earlier on, that we can address it afterwards, we can't. Once the addition is built, and if it affects somebody else's property, there's no going back. It's very difficult to fix that after it is built. Not impossible, although sometimes it is impossible, but you can't just turn back the clock. You can't unbuild what was built. That's not going to happen. And if someone else's property is lessened or damaged or flooded, that damage is probably permanent. So I think we have to give those people the opportunity to speak up and get their concerns answered before anything happens. And if there is some additional cost for the person who's building in addition or whatever it is, I think that's a cost they should be willing to pay to make sure that their building does not damage their neighbors. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you for the comment, Barbara. Andrea, I see another hand up. Would you like to have a few words
Sure.
again?
Yeah, my neighborhood, like Barbara said, if there's construction going on, we'd like to be aware of it. So Scott Ave, Mr. Hagan, I guess, has passed on or moved to the VA. Murray bought his house at the bottom of Scott Ave. It's a paper street. It's a little tiny nothing street. There's no drainage. There's no storm drains. There's no, curb, nothing. He wants to build 2 houses there. I'm at the bottom of his hill. It's about a 9% slope from the top of Taylor Ave down. Right now, it's all green space. It absorbs the water. He puts 2 more houses there. He put 3 houses across the street. He can't have, where's the regulation that says he has to improve the drainage on that street? I'm told it's a paper street. So what does that mean to me? What does paper street mean?
Please. So this would not address any required improvements to the street at all. This would be specific to the lots that are proposed to be developed. So the idea would be there would be no additional water going to that street if the lot were developed correctly under this bylaw. The existing.
You put 2 houses, there's no additional water coming down the street?
That's the goal, right?
There's less green space.
Right, but you can infiltrate, you can mitigate that by putting in underground infiltration.
Oh, so he has to stipulate in-ground infiltration
Right,
in the permit?
He will have to identify how he is going to infiltrate.
Okay, and downstream from that is a wetland. There's a storm drain that goes, like, there's a warehouse at the bottom of Murray and Scott, and used to have a storm drain. People used to skate there like 30 years ago. Now it's a warehouse. Somebody backfilled the storm drain. It's covered. There's no drainage.
Andrea, I think
We
this is
look at
part
the
of
plot
what
plan
we're
and
trying
look
to
at that?
improve.
Can we look at the plot plan and look at that area, maybe?
You should call the office, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Andrea, feel free to call the office on Monday. I will be in and I will,
Okay, Ally.
we'll find the plan, we'll take a look. And just before we wrap up, can I just remind
Yeah.
everybody who's been calling in so far that we are proposing to require engineered plans. And these will really be these will be able to give us the confidence to actually believe that the water can be infiltrated on site, regardless of whether there is a hearing.
Right, because regardless of whether there's a hearing, the engineered plan will have to look at the feasibility and the design of the infiltration and the soils, and to make sure it is sized properly for, whatever the 1-inch storm, 2-inch, whatever it is that they do.
Exactly.
So all the basement flooding, do I just give the bills to the town?
I can't answer what you should do.
We're downhill from this project. It's not going to be good. It hasn't been good every time there's a high water event. We're all flooded.
All of our
It's a low
stormwater,
point. It's a low point in the town. It's a low water mark in the town.
Andrea, all of our stormwater permit approvals require that the flow volume and the flow rate leaving the property are less than they were before the development.
Less than or equal.
Less than or equal to. So the post-development cannot have more runoff than the pre-development. That's the goal, that's what the
But when
regulations.
but when there's not an engineered plan, as it is now for every homeowner project, we can't tell them for sure that that's the case. If an engineer was not involved, we can't tell a neighbor that that's the case. So the big thing, aside from the importance of what Barbara and Brenda said regarding communication from a neighbor in a hearing, aside from that issue, which is valid too, having the stamp plan is a major leap forward, because an engineer is not going to stamp the plan unless he knows that the soil is adequate, it is sized appropriately and installed correctly. Because otherwise, it's their license on the line.
Well, here are your words. I heard them all at Northeastern University.
Yep. So
I'm
additionally,
not confident that because the developer is Murray, this is gonna work out right.
so additionally, I mean, there are lots, I don't know what size lots there are on Scott Ave, but if somebody were building a lot, say a 10,000 square foot lot or 12,000, a small lot, or even a 20,000.
Below it is wetlands.
Even a 20,000 square lot, under our current stormwater bylaw, if they kept their footprint to 8,000 square feet, there would be no permit at all. And they could just run their water off any way they want. Have their driveway pitched down into the road, their
But it's a
downspouts
paper
go to their
street,
driveway.
so
we're
there's no
trying- we're-
drainage along the street. There's no storm drains along that street.
I
It's a
understand
paper
that. I
street.
understand that. So what we're trying to do is improve the situation.
I would like to improve it by widening and putting
Well,
storm
yeah.
drains.
This has nothing to do with
That's
this
not us.
particular-
You have to talk to DPW on that.
DPW.
Yeah,
Talk to
they're the
DPW.
ones that handle the drainage in the streets.
I'll
can
call them next time I have a sump pump running.
I would, okay, I guess.
Not good, not good answer.
There's another hand, Brenda again.
Brenda, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just, one more thing. There was something that was on Facebook, and I want to make sure that we're being very clear on what we're talking about. This is residential only. And I'd like to put on the record that these plans are for residential areas only. Corporations are under complete site plan review for stormwater and water table issues. So I just want to make sure that that's very clear for the public. And so-
What you're saying is that, are you saying that the planning board
Said commercial sites are not on-
does not have jurisdiction over?
No, the stormwater issues that we're talking about and the bylaw that we're proposing are not, these are for residential issues. Corporations.
That's not true, Brenda. They are for commercial as
Maybe
well.
she's talking about this, her bylaw.
Oh,
Our bylaw.
okay, well, we're not talking about it.
Okay, yeah, that's different than ours, yes.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that, we're talking, the folks at home are understanding, because people have a little frustration about, where the water is coming from and whatnot. How water is understood between residential and corporations. So for our bylaw, corporations are under site plan review for stormwater and water table issues. If yours is different, please, I wish if you could elaborate how that's different from residential versus corporation, please elaborate that for the community, because I think they really need to hear that.
Well,
It's a size threshold.
we have a size threshold of land disturbance. And the way we originally set it up is the way it still is now, that if you have a disturbing land that is greater than 20,000 square feet, which in most cases is not a residential lot, then you are covered by the full permit that would have a hearing, a stamped plan by a professional engineer, an as-built plan, a performance bond, and a set of conditions associated with it. If you have less than 20,000 square feet, whether you're residential or you're a small commercial, you would be between 10,000 and 20,000 square feet. You were in the category of an abbreviated permit. It does not require a stamp plan. It does not require an as-built plan. It does not require a performance bond and does not require them to come to a hearing. So, and then if you're less than 10,000, which some homeowner projects are, they don't require any permit, and the jurisdiction of the bylaw under 10,000 is only if there's a violation. So if they have a whole bunch of stuff running into the street, we cite them, we use friendly enforcement, we send them a letter and said, this is your sort of like your first warning. Do you think you can clean this up, please? And if we have to go to more formal enforcement, like a cease and desist order and things, which is very rare, we can do that.
Can I just clarify on the commercial projects between 10 and 20,000? Those projects are also going through site plan approval with the planning board. So we always do get engineered stamped plans anyway on those because they're going through your board.
Right. Thank you for that. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I'm just trying to make your meetings just as long as ours.
Okay, so we'll have planning board number 1 and planning board number 2 apparently. Okay, so here's where we are. We have some sticking points. The first sticking point is what exactly to do about trees and perhaps doing something that sounds reasonable. We haven't worked that out totally yet, I don't think. We also have the comments for that Barbara LaRue and Brenda Rappaport gave regarding the value on having a hearings. But I would qualify, if this is correct, tell me if I'm wrong, that the value of having hearings for the problems with the greatest risk, so that the neighbors have a chance to be present and ask questions as well. I would qualify it that way in my own mind. We also have an issue regarding the 10%, the threshold of 10% of additional, 10% of the lot size as additional impervious area is, to me, a criteria that will bring everything back into the, because if the average project is additional 2,000 square feet, then we're saying we're going to, okay, well, it's not the land disturbance, but we're throwing out this other thing that's going to bring everybody back in, which is away from some of the philosophy that some of us have expressed. So those are the three things. Does anybody see anything else?
Can I just comment one other thing? So I think we're trying to strengthen this bylaw and get certain things accomplished, but we're trying to be reasonable about it. I mean, we're not aware of any city or town in the state of Massachusetts that requires every single family house to go before the Conservation Commission.
Right.
So, it's probably unreasonable since nobody else is doing it. So if we can accomplish that without having every single house project go before the Conservation Commission. There are other ways of, achieving our goals.
Talking about every single tear down or every single project?
Every new house, whether it's a tear down or a new house.
I think we have to think about it.
Yeah.
Okay. And everyone has given us a lot to think about. And the worst thing we can do is hurry up and throw something on paper and put it before a town meeting when it's not well thought out. That's a mistake. Okay, and if we decide to go to the September town meeting, then we have more time to think about it, and we don't want to put ourselves under pressure when it's such a contentious issue, it appears. So.
You want to try to schedule another subcommittee meeting before the next meeting?
Yes, I think we should have something to just kick it around and so forth. And I doubt it's all going to be made clear as a result of a subcommittee meeting, but those three things need to be talked about, I think. I'd like to
try to do it hybrid so that if people want to join by.
Yes.
We didn't.
Okay, so I think we have to wrap this up because I am not trying to compete with the planning board.
Right.
I'd like to thank everybody who has made very thoughtful comments. You've all given us a lot to think about, and I thank you for taking the time to do this. All right, so could I have a motion to continue the hearing on the proposed changes to the
erosion and sedimentation control bylaw to the March 24th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second, Don.
Gail?
All right, Don, how do you vote?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Indra?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Ed? Ed?
Yes, sorry, I had it off.
That, and the chair votes yes, so by a vote of 600, the public hearing for the proposed changes to the erosion and sedimentation control bylaw is continued to March 24th. Okay, thank you all for spending your evening with us. All right, so.
Thank you, Brenda.
All right, have a good evening, folks, okay, if you're logging off now. All right, so next we have anything for the planning board? Will you send something on 15 Adams Street?
Sure.
For them?
Yep.
Okay, anything on subcommittee and staff reports? No? Other business? Any,
I would, if you wouldn't mind, could we maybe vote to approve the 2 subcommittee minutes that I sent out earlier in the week?
can we do that next time?
We could.
Okay. Upcoming meetings, March 24th, April 14th. I will not be joining the meeting until about 8.
Which one?
The March 24th.
March 20.
So can you chair for an hour or so?
Yeah.
Appreciate
Sure.
it. I don't vote.
I may be here by myself.
What?
I may be here by myself.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn, please?
Gail have something?
Gail, you've just muted yourself, we think.
Yep, I did. So Eileen, just a quick question before we adjourn. Am I correct? There's no signatures for tomorrow?
You are correct.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Thank you,
Okay,
folks. Have a good
Dawn,
night.
how do you vote? Dawn,
Yes.
Gail,
Yep.
Indra,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Ed,
Cheers.
chair votes yes, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you all and have a good evening.